I'm using the portable audio, so if I sound a little different, that's why.
Yeah. Well, you are definitely a little bit quieter, which is not a huge
Okay.
thing. I can boost it up in post as well.
Okay.
Um,
And yeah, I can also try boosting some of the gains on my end as well.
all right. Well, if
Won't
you're
mess
going to
with anything.
do it right now, so that the whole thing
Now
is
we'll
all going to
just
be
leave
at
it
one
for now,
volume.
but I'll play around with it later with you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's fine. So, one other thing, the new thing on my end in this is we are actually streaming live on YouTube right now. Did,
So what do you have up for me?
well, both of us only have audio. So the only thing that's happening on the stream is our audio is getting passed through.
So what are people looking at?
So what they're looking at is a screen that says Griftcast IRL with chats taking up most of the screen when people chat. Although I think why am I not in here? I should have a little.
Looping me into your whole Griftcast
Yeah,
thing.
Griftcast, baby. I think this is a great way to do it. Is we got to record these podcasts anyway, or I do multiple ones. This is one of them. Might as well do it live and get some grift going.
Yeah, so everything's going to the live stream.
Yeah. So obviously, we're recording as usual. We'll have this episode posted. If you're listening to this on a podcast, everything worked well. If this took a little longer, then maybe things didn't work out quite as well. But yeah, everything should work. I mean, it looks like everything's running on the stream, and I'm going to actually to talk a little bit about how the sausage is made here. I'm going to post a link to the stream on No Agenda Social as well to see if anyone wants to jump in on that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I know that there was a topic that that I already mentioned we're going to cover. It doesn't have to be the first one we talk about, but certainly we will talk about Ruby Ridge today.
Yeah, and I funny thing is my parents were in town this weekend,
Mm,
and I kind of brought up the whole Joe Rogan segment that kicked this conversation between us
yeah.
off, and had them watch it and I kind of got their take on it too. So we've got some interesting perspectives there, and again, growing up, I had a lot of involvement with several people who were involved with Ruby Ridge
Hmm.
directly. In fact, my first employer was one of them. So yeah. Anyway, it was a good conversation, and we can kick off right into it.
Sure. Why? Let's
Um,
do it.
so Joe Rogan had a guest on recently, about 8 days ago now, and he went through and talked about Ruby Ridge, and he ignored some key things that really kind of stuck out and bugged the crap out of me. Because if I were to describe Ruby Ridge, I wouldn't have done it the way he did. So, literally in 3 minutes, 30 seconds, he talks about an event that ended multiple lives
Hmm.
and, ended up with a lawsuit where the FBI was found liable for wrongful death of two people.
Right.
So, one of the things he first ignores is, he says the ATF decided they had a problem with Randy Weaver and they went up there. Well, they
Hmm.
had a problem with Randy Weaver because they had an undercover informant have him saw off a shotgun for him to try and turn Randy Weaver into an undercover informant. And when Randy Weaver said, "No, I want nothing to do with the white supremacists. I'm not going up there. I don't want to be involved with them. And I don't want to be an undercover agent for you."
Hmm.
That's when they decided to do a sting on Randy Weaver. Furthermore, the guy goes through and says that the son shot at the ATF agents or the FBI agents. That's true. After they shot and killed his dog and did not announce themselves as federal agents.
Hmm.
So I'm sorry, I'm walking out in the woods on my property and someone shoots at me and kills my dog. Yeah, I'm probably shooting back too.
Hmm.
And by the way, he fired a shot at them, turned around, and was running away when they gunned him down in the back.
Well, as FBI usually does, yeah.
Okay. So my point in this is in the first 30 seconds of setting up Ruby Ridge, he glosses over some things that make it sound not as bad,
Mhm.
right? He's going through and he's telling the story, but he's doing it in a way that doesn't really, as someone who, I knew a lot about this through direct family involvement. And,
Right.
so knowing the story the way I know it, it just seems like doesn't not doing it justice. Furthermore, he said that the snipers thought Randy was charging him. Randy was running away when he got shot. He
Mhm.
got shot through the shoulder and it went through and hit his friend. And then they shoot Randy's wife, Vicky, while she's holding baby Elishaba
Right.
right between the eyes.
Wait, what was the
No,
baby's
I'm
name?
sorry, that wasn't the Elishaba.
Hmm.
That is not the way, he portrays it as, oh, they just dumped the next person that they saw. No.
Yeah.
Lon Hariuchi was involved in Ruby Ridge. He was involved in Waco. And, you
And that's
know,
the FBI agent.
that's the FBI sniper that was involved.
Mhm.
And he's just, you know, there's some visceral details that are just BS. Oh,
Yeah.
and the other thing,
Well, let's
he
start at
said
the
that.
beginning, though. You're covering things that the guy didn't talk about. If somebody had never heard of Ruby Ridge, which is probably a chunk of the people listening.
Mhm.
What is Ruby Ridge?
So Ruby Ridge was in the early '90s, and Randy and Vicky Weaver, after having had successful careers and really, building a life for themselves, said, "You know what? We don't like the way the world's going. We want to live off the grid, raise our kids the way we want to raise them, and really not be in the city life." So they bought property in northern Idaho at Ruby Ridge, and unfortunately, there's some other separatists in that area as well in the early '90s. The federal government wanted to investigate. So Randy Weaver goes up there, and
Oh, Ben, I think we lost
yeah,
you.
sorry,
You back?
nope,
Okay.
yeah, my got muted for some reason for a second. Anyway, they go to some church potlucks. They get invited to some other things. They realize this group of people that they're being invited to hang out with are white supremacists and separatists.
Mhm.
So the Weavers said, "Yeah, no, don't want anything to do with that." They back off and have nothing to do with that group anymore. Well, one of Randy's neighbors, who he thought and trusted, came up to him. And by the way, you have to realize Randy Weaver is a former Green Beret
Yeah.
uh,
So how old
from
is Randy?
veteran.
What's the kid situation? What's the wife situation? Give a little more details.
I don't remember how old Randy was at this point in time in his life, but they had several kids. They had the eldest daughter, the son, and the youngest daughter at this point.
Okay.
Married to his wife Vicky. They had a friend living with them whose name escapes me right now.
Mhm.
Um, but regardless, they were trying to be left alone
Mhm.
and homeschooling their kids, raising their kids the way they wanted. And this neighbor who Randy trusted came over to him and said, "Hey, Randy, I want to saw off a shotgun to keep in my truck, and I know you know how to do it. Can you help me do it?"
Mhm.
Randy, not knowing that this guy was a undercover informant, said sure and sawed off the shotgun for him.
Yeah.
So therefore, creating a crime, manufacturing and an NFA item illegally. So as a result, they had dirt on Randy,
All right. So let
and
me backtrack a little here too. Uh I come to you, hey Ben, I don't have a saw. Can you like go and become a felon for me? Is that something most people would just say, yeah, sure.
um, no, it is not.
Was
But
this the first gun that Randy ever owned?
no, by
Okay.
no means.
All right. So
But
Randy knows guns, at least somewhat. He owns guns, but yet he doesn't
yeah,
know that this is a felony.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he just didn't think about it or care.
Okay.
So Randy's attitude was very much, "This is my country, but not my government."
Ah,
Right.
okay, good.
So
So make sure you cover that. Yeah.
right. So to be fair, he didn't give a fuck whether or not he was committing a felony or not.
Okay.
So people are like, "Well, why would he do that?"
Right.
Because he didn't care and he was helping his neighbor, is what
Hmm.
he thought. So I mean, that's how they entrapped him. Um, they tried to say, "Hey, Randy, we'll forget about this if you and your family will, go back and attend those events and keep an eye on those people for us and tell us all about it. We'll just let this go away."
Mhm.
And Randy, being the yeah, this is not my effing government type, said, "Yeah, no, not only do I not want to be involved with those people, I'm not going to fucking help you."
Mhm.
No. Um, his trial date, they set up an initial date and he didn't show up. And that's kind of what the excuse was to kick all this off.
Okay.
And one of the things that the guest on JRE did cover, um, was that, which Mike Glover, by the way, was the guest,
Mhm.
was that, you know, when the FBI was thinking about this, they're like, holy shit, this is a Vietnam vet and a Green Beret Vietnam vet that had served multiple tours. This is
Okay.
not a guy you go up against lightly, especially when the way the Weaver's house was set up was on the top of the hill. Basically, from the house, you could see and look at all approaches. It was actually geographically, from a land stance, a very defensible position. And what ended up happening was the ATF and the FBI started staking the Weavers out, observing, setting up, and they started moving in closer and closer to observe. And that's when, these guys in ghillie suits were trying to sneak closer to do forward observation.
Mhm.
They were not planning on kicking this off right then. And Sammy decided to go for a walk in the woods with the
And those
dog.
were FBI, or what branch were they from?
So it was a the people who were responding was a mix of FBI and ATF agents that were investigating. What ended up happening, as soon as stuff with Sammy happened, was the FBI hostage rescue team there and engaged. And which it's ironic because why was the hostage rescue team even there?
Mhm.
You got to ask yourself, okay, so you're planning on this, you're planning on serving an arrest warrant on this guy. Why do you go with snipers?
Right.
You know? Anyway, what it
Was
comes
there
down
ever
to,
did that ever come out in court that you're aware of why they went with snipers?
yeah, it was part of the wrongful death suit. The judge in the case basically said that the FBI and ATF went in there looking for a fight when they had no reason to expect one, and because of the over aggressive nature of the way they set everything up,
Mhm.
they caused the event, and they were responsible for the wrongful death.
Mhm. So, I I guess we can probably assume that given the fact that, they knew the other groups that were in that area, which was the, allegedly, and I don't know, maybe actual white supremacist group was living, in that area, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That they probably had everything cranked up to 11 going in, assuming that those guys would want to that he was part of that group and that there would be a big fight happening.
Uh, there's a possibility of that, but the compound that the FBI and ATF were interested in was not exactly proximate to the Weaver's residence. I mean, you're talking, a good jog. It's not like it's right next door.
Mhm.
Um, so the odds of that response and that didn't unfold. So after, Sammy was shot and the things went down the way they did, Randy and Elishaba and his eldest daughter and his friend, which I'm still blanking on the name, are held up. You know, Vicky's body's just laying there. They can't do anything to move her or get her because they're pinned down,
Mhm.
and they hold up for several days. Um, by this time, there was a protest down the hill at the main access road that the FBI and ATF had blocked off. There were people from around the area protesting what the FBI and ATF were doing,
Mhm.
because the FBI and ATF had this blocked off, and they said that there was a hostage situation at the Weavers, and people knowing them said bullshit, and started really kind of engaging. The sheriff tried to get engaged. They basically told him to go home and sit down. Um, there was a lot of issues there. Anyway, another point that really got me that I thought that, hey, that's not right is Mike Glover on Jerry said that his former commander talked him off the mountain,
Mhm.
and that's not true. Bo Greitz, who was involved, who was a uh, you know Green Beret and a colonel in the U.S. Army, one of the most decorated Green Berets to come out of Vietnam, was one of the guys who talked him down off the hill. The other guy was Jack McLam.
Mhm.
I know them both personally. Jack McLam was my first employer. Um, I lived not too far from Bo. Knew him very well.
Mhm.
Um, they went up to talk him down. Bo was not Randy's commanding officer. Now, to say that in that he was a commander in the region and maybe Randy fell under his command at some point in time in a general sense,
Mhm.
maybe, but they didn't know each other directly and personally. They knew of each other because Bo in the early 90s was very much in the general patriot movement out there. He had run for president, he had written a book, he'd done, lots of kind of kooky things. And by the way, when I say I know the guy, I do not endorse Bo Greitz in any way, shape, or form. I've got a lot of issues with Bo, but I do know the man very well. Now, Jack McLam, on the other hand, Jack McLam was nothing but a patriot as far as I'm concerned.
You got super quiet, dude.
Nothing has changed on my end.
That's weird. Okay.
Anyway, um,
Talk louder then.
okay, I will talk louder. Um, the point is that, there was just several points that just very much stuck out to me of okay, we're going to tell this story, but I'm not going to tell all the grisly details. I'm going to not make it sound as egregious and bad as it was. So
Mhm.
even though Mike Glover in this is telling a story and making the ATF and the FBI look really bad and saying, hey, if that happened today, hopefully there'd be protests over it. Well, there were protests then. Hopefully they would be nationwide today. But,
Would there
he,
be any that's a good question. Let's take a quick pause and just think about that. Do you
yeah,
think that a couple of white people getting shot by the FBI today would be a protest?
yeah, I would hope so. I mean, under the egregious nature of this, and you got to remember this was a several day standoff. So yeah, I think it would grab media attention. I don't know that there would be protests as far as immediately because the narrative's going to be controlled. It depends on what gets out there.
Mhm.
If Sammy was recording as he walked around his woods with his dog, doing a Twitch stream or something like kids do today, or constantly doing something,
Yeah.
and what went down. Yeah, I think that would, be all over the place. You had body cam footage involved or something like that. Yeah, it'd
Yeah.
be all over the place.
Now, was there any body cam footage from anybody, cops, police, anybody, or is that not a thing back then?
That was not a thing back
Okay.
then at all.
So all we have is just individual testimony.
Correct.
And the FBI didn't shoot their own surveillance videos that were released during trials.
They had some surveillance information that was released,
Okay.
but the FBI also kept a lot of things very, very quiet in the original trial. I don't know about any of the subsequent stuff that came out
Mhm.
because I know Randy was pushing years and years after for FOIA for full records release, but they
Mhm.
kept saying sources and methods, not wanting to give up who all they had as confidential informants in the area and so on. And the judge allowed them to protect a lot of information.
Yeah. So the other thing I just noticed, I pulled up a map,
Mhm.
that Ruby Ridge is like, a skip
Damn
and a
near
jump from
Canada.
Canada.
Yep.
It's about as far in the US as you can get away without leaving the country.
Yeah, like I said, Vicky and Randy wanted to live a life off the grid.
Mhm. And was it actually an off the grid house? Did they have
Yes, yeah, mainly.
electricity or anything?
Uh, I don't know if they were hooked up to electricity. I know they had a phone, but they were, if they weren't fully off the grid, that's the direction they were going.
Mhm. Okay.
Yep.
Got it. And then do we know anything more about I know Randy didn't give a shit if he said if he did something illegal with the shotgun, but did he actually at least get the court date appearance thing and just ignore it, or did he never even see that?
No, he ignored it. He did ignore it.
Okay.
Yep. That is 100%. Again, but again, okay, you have a criminal who has violated the NFA, and he's ignored his court date.
Mhm.
You're still not going to go in with snipers. You're going
Right.
to show up with an arrest warrant. You're going to arrest him, and then you're going to go from there.
Mhm.
You are now
Yeah.
watching
It
Two Good Old Boys
I think
podcast.
that,
Right.
the
Griftcast.
method here seemed to be disproportionate to the crime.
Absolutely, that's the entire problem.
Yeah. Because I mean, I think that I'd have to look it up to be sure, but I think that's one of the lowest felonies you can get. It's not a high level felony.
You mean violating the NFA?
Yeah. It's $10,000. That's not a high felony.
Yeah, it's
I
not.
mean, that's like I don't want to trivialize it. $10,000 is still $10,000, but in a lot of states you'd have more for smoking pot than that, or distributing pot. Not for smoking, but for distributing pot, which is simply possessing a higher amount of pot.
And one of the things that also Mike Glover's account of this made it sound like this happened very quickly and was over with.
Mhm.
Um, First of all, I want to point out that Sammy um, was like 13 or 14 at the time. You know, i- this happened over an 11-day period.
Mhm.
It was holed up there for 11 days. Um, yeah, it's just insane to me the way to me this was presented and glossed over.
Mhm.
Um,
And so
so
when they shot him, what happened? Let's kind of go back to that point. So when they originally shot Sammy, so they shot the dog first.
yes, they shot the
One
dog.
hit, dog's dead.
Yes.
How many times did they shoot the kid?
Uh, I don't remember how many times he was actually struck, but both officers fired and he was shot in the back while fleeing.
Okay. And then so he fell down.
Correct.
And how far away
And
was that from the house?
um, I think he was a few hundred yards away at that time. And Randy and the guy who was involved with them, which I'm
Mhm.
trying to remember his name.
Yeah, I don't remember his name
But
either. It's his friend, right?
it was anyway. Um, they tried to see what was going on, but at this point, the FBI is, you know, running up the hill. These guys in ghillie suits are running up the hill. Everybody from the team is collapsing on the house. They are raiding the house at this point. Was the
Mhm.
decision that the FBI made, not pull back and let's try and talk and see what's
Mhm.
going on. No, no, they went full on. We got to go get him now. Right, snap decision. We got to go get this guy. We've made contact. We got to go.
Mhm.
So at that point, they're trying to figure out what's going on. Randy and his friend are,
Yeah.
and they grab guns because they heard gunshots. Right, they grab guns and they had heard Sammy yell, "You killed my fucking dog," or "You killed
Mhm.
my dog," and they started running to go see what was going on. Well, they immediately start taking fire from FBI agents. So guess what they do?
They
Again,
shoot
the
back.
government, by their own admission in court, had not announced themselves yet.
Mhm.
They had not announced federal agents warrant. So they shot back. So at that point, they realize that people are coming up the hill. They're getting surrounded. Again, he's Green Beret. So he retreats to the house. And as he's retreating to the house,
Yeah.
Vicky is standing there holding the door open while she's holding Elishaba, while his friend runs in first. Randy's right behind him. Randy takes a round in the shoulder. Bone fragments and bullet fragments hit his friend. They're both wounded. And then they in Mike Glover's words, drop the next person who is Vicky's infant daughter.
Which was his wife. You got quiet again.
Yes,
Yeah.
his wife.
Yeah. That's so how far, I don't remember this, and I don't know if you know, but How far towards Sam did they get?
They didn't get very far before they were engaged.
Okay. All right.
Just enough to see him dead.
Did the FBI recover
Well,
Sam's
see
body
him
then?
down. See him down. In fact, one of the questions during the negotiations was, "Is my boy alive?"
Mm-hmm.
And they had to tell him no, he wasn't.
Okay. So
and that's
FBI
when-
recovered his body.
Correct.
Got it. And
Well,
then
no. FBI didn't recover his body, but Randy went out there and was allowed to get his body and Vicky's at one point in time during the siege
what point is there in doing that?
because he wanted to recover his son.
No, I get it, but I mean, from the FBI standpoint, they need
Allowing him to maneuver and go get his son without the fear of getting shot.
right, but they should take his son to a morgue so that he's not going to decompose in the house.
Right. Well, but you got to remember from the FBI standpoint at this point, their narrative was that they're in hostage rescue
Mm-hmm.
and that the two daughters are hostages. That was their narrative at this point.
That's so fucked up. So they killed the son and the mother, and then they're saying, well, we need to rescue the daughters from the father.
Correct.
By probably trying to kill him as well, I would assume. Seems to be their modus operandi at that time.
The whole point in this, and I think we're good on the details, and I'll just wrap with glossing over an event like Ruby Ridge or Waco. A lot of people that really does a disservice because there's a lot of people in my generation. I think there's a lot of people in your generation that have no clue about what really happened.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, we know the details. We know that, the FBI was absolutely found in the wrong, that his three daughters that survived were awarded over $1 million each. He got a big settlement for the death of his wife and son. There was a lot there. Um, regardless of what you think of the Weavers' politics, which I'm not a separatist. I live in a town. I try to resolve things. But if that's the way they want to go live their life, let them do it.
Yeah. And just to wrap this thing up, it ended with Randy surrendering.
Correct. Randy, after 11 days, Bo and Jack talked him down. Bo said, "Hey, man, you're going to have to go to jail for some of this, but we'll get justice for Vicky."
Mm-hmm.
And, let the process work. And, Bo and Jack walked up to the house and walked down with them.
Mm-hmm.
Putting their bodies between them and the FBI and ATF as far as Randy was concerned.
Yeah. And he did serve time.
Yes. Well, I mean, he committed a crime.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm sure they piled on a bunch of more crimes beyond just the initial charge.
No, not that I know of.
Really?
In fact, his conviction, I believe, was actually a shortened thing because of some of the circumstances. He was fined $10,000 and 18 months in prison. That's it.
Yep. That's the maximum for that particular infraction. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's wild.
Kevin Harris, that was the
That's
name
right,
of his
Kevin
friend.
Harris. Yep, I remember
And he
him.
was acquitted of all criminal
Yeah,
charges.
yeah.
So even though they fired at FBI agents and did everything else,
Mm-hmm.
no charges were even brought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the FBI from that incident learned their lesson and realized they had to kill everybody next time.
Which is what they did in Waco.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I brought it up. Yeah, it's like dead lips don't talk.
Yeah, loose lips don't sink. Dead lips don't sink ships.
Loose lips sink ships. Yeah. So it's a gruesome story, and it was a very dark chapter in American history. I mean, right now, world's going to hell in a handbasket. We talked about this numerous times in this particular podcast, but That was also a very dark time. That was a time when it really started to feel, and I remember this very vividly firsthand, when it started to feel like the government was truly against the people. That
Absolutely.
that there was a complete disregard for any kind of individual rights. The Clinton administration's
I mean,
first term.
doesn't it feel like that now, given that the FBI headquarters is going to be larger than
I
the
know.
Pentagon?
Oh my God. Yeah, you saw that,
Why
right?
don't you
So
talk about that for a
they're
while?
building the largest military building in the world. There's nothing in China that's bigger than what we're building, and that's going to be the new headquarters of the FBI. It really kind of illustrates, I think, the fact that they consider the population of the United States prisoners, and they need to ramp up the security detail. The FBI is the federal police, which should have never been created. We'll talk about that as well. That is
Which
not
there is
part of
no
the
federal
purview of
policing
the federal
power.
government. But now they're going to double down. It is crazy. So yeah, did you have any more info on that, or just the stuff I sent you?
Uh, no, just what Revolver News and some of the others have
Mm-hmm.
had, and just the fact that they're going to be expanding the headquarters footprint to be that the federal policing power is ever expanding is just a testament to how far we've drifted from the Constitution. And this is one of the things that I think a lot of people need to realize is the Constitution is really not in force in this country anymore and hasn't been for a long time. But now it's just becoming more and more blatant.
Yeah,
And, we have to realize that.
yeah. It's you know, without getting overly conspiratorial, I think there's always some element of conspiracy here. Uh, it does seem like the default position of federal agencies like the FBI, and there's a few others as well, like the ATF, which is pushing like plainly unconstitutional changes down our throats right now. Um, that the default state of these agencies is to treat Americans
As
as
criminals.
criminals, yeah, as prisoners in a jail. It's like you give them as few rights as possible, and then you fuck with them to make sure that they don't push back. It's and this is maybe uh, a good time to cross over into the conversation about the ATF.
You want to do the ATF or another evidence of fucking with people?
Well, let's do the ATF and we'll do the other one. I mean, the ATF thing is, I think, hitting even mainstream news at this point, to where I think this is the first time they've done it, although maybe not, where they have literally gone and done a 180 without any single law changes. They've taken a position contrary to the one that they were advising
Contrary to
people.
their previous
Yeah, like they literally had been formally, officially, through letters to manufacturers telling them that, and what we're talking about here, of course, is pistol braces. Pistol braces, which somewhat visibly look like stocks, but are extremely uncomfortable to use as stocks. It's really more of a visual distinction. And the intended purpose is to have another point of contact by strapping a gun to your forearm. And it's meant for heavier pistols. Now, the heavier pistols, very often in rifle calibers, that would make sense. Those would be the heavier pistols. So if you have a pistol that is in the rifle caliber, quite often it looks like the front end of a rifle. Of course, the barrel is much shorter because there's no point in having a pistol with a 16-inch barrel, the length of a minimum barrel of a rifle, because at that point you might as well have a freaking rifle. So, but if you have something that has a shorter barrel in a rifle caliber, well, it's nice to have an additional point of contact there. If you're not going to be using it as a rifle, you're going to use it as a pistol. And incidentally, not that this matters at all, but just for point of reference, a lot of states have different hunting seasons for pistols and rifles. So if you're taking game down by pistol, you might have 2 weeks or maybe even a few days ahead of everybody else to go hunting, because they recognize that there's a difference in how many of the game animals are going to get taken down by people shooting pistols versus rifles. Same thing with archery. Quite often that season precedes the rifle season. But this argument for pistol braces has nothing to do with hunting. It's just a general addition to a pistol that the ATF has for probably a decade at this point, but certainly long enough, had considered to be perfectly legal items, and have sent out letters to, because manufacturers, you're going to spend a lot of money building up a manufacturing platform.
Non-NFA items.
Yeah, to make these, there's you're not going to manufacture something that's essentially not going to be purchasable by anyone. You're only going to manufacture it if people can buy it. And so most manufacturers have letters from the ATF after they've sent in a sample, advising them that, yes, this is a perfectly legal item and it is not in any means restricted. And so what happens? Well, no laws changed. No laws are are signed in place. And the ATF, based on our current commander and idiot's position, decide that they're going to administratively change the definition to make the pistol brace illegal.
And by the way, this did happen one other time.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. You'll have to talk about that because I'm not aware of that. But let me just finish the thought. So they're going to make them illegal by essentially saying that a pistol with a pistol brace shall now be defined as a short-barreled rifle. And short-barreled rifles are controlled through the National Firearms Act, the NFA, and you are allowed to have one, but only after filling out appropriate paperwork, paying a $200 stamp fee, and passing a full background check with fingerprints. And then the control of that item is very limited, meaning you can't take your gun out of state if you go somewhere. You can't bring it with you. And now there's some questions about whether you can even let anybody touch the damn thing and have your friends shoot it, which used to be perfectly fine too. Now there've been reports that contradict each other on whether or not they're allowing people to share their guns or to have a buddy use the gun at the range even. Anyway,
Well,
what was the item you were
quick
talking
way
about?
around that is trust.
Yeah. But we shouldn't have to do that.
100%.
So what was the other thing you brought up?
Just bump stocks.
Oh, yeah.
Bump stocks were recategorized the same way. And
Right.
there were some bump stocks that used springs that the ATF, said, hey, or early on that's a machine gun
Mm-hmm.
mechanism that is aiding in the reset of the trigger.
Yep, you're super quiet again.
Let me check levels, but anyway, bump stocks was a thing.
Yep. They were a thing. And there was a court ruling literally within the last couple of weeks that fully reversed the bump stock policy of the ATF and said,
right, because it was just rewriting an opinion, same way this
yeah,
short barrel rifle opinion is.
yep.
And to me, as soon as you get to a level where this can be challenged in court, I think it'll be overturned based off of what we saw with the bump stock ruling. But I'm just saying this is the same playbook.
And I'm kind of thinking, well, there has to be a fucking penalty for them doing this knowing it's going to get overturned, because the amount of man hours spent on the ATF side to put this together, added to the number of people affected and the amount of man hours all of us now have to put in to challenge this ruling or comply with it. Even if you want to comply with it, you're happy to do that. It's still a whole process. You got to go get fingerprinted. You have to get photos of your gun. You have to file a bunch of paperwork. Form 1, you got to send it in to them. And their current delay before this event even happened was 6 months. And there's an estimated between 10 and 40 million pistol braces out there, which means if everybody, and certainly not everyone's going to do this, but if everybody actually decided to register their guns, then 6 months at a slow trickle that they were getting them. Somebody did the math and calculated based on the speed that's currently handling the Form 1s at the ATF. It would take somewhere around 168 years to process every application. And when asked, the ATF was asked in their FAQ on this topic, what is the process for people that have applied but don't get a response within 6 months? Because the way the rules read right now at the ATF is if you get a response within 6 months, then follow what the response says. If you don't get a response within 6 months, it's an automatic no. So that's the default process that they have. Again, these are not laws. These are rules the ATF makes up for themselves. And
Well,
so if you have 20 million people, which is the average of what that range is, that have these pistol braces
already in their possession.
in their possessions, they've been using them. I've got a bunch, right? It's like everyone that's bought a pistol of a rifle caliber probably has one of these, or several for that matter. And if you now have all these people follow not the law, follow the ATF's instructions, which are not the law, but nonetheless, the ATF can put you in prison if you don't follow them. And their process is 6 months without an answer is an automatic no. You're going to have 20 million felons that the FBI in their huge building can now go after and start shooting down like a bunch of rabid dogs, because that's their process.
Well, and let's be clear. Let's say you go, okay, I'm going to comply and I'm going to take my pistol brace off of the gun and I'm going to hold on to it till I see where this comes out. But it's not on the gun. So the gun is just a pistol at this point. If you have that in the same building and the ATF knocks on your door, what they're going to do is say you have intent to manufacture.
Yep.
You have the parts there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is another bullshit thing. This whole intent is used in way too many legal precedents. Like you can't get the intent of somebody. That shouldn't be the an actual charge. It's the same thing for the marijuana based on the amount they find, right?
Yeah.
If it's I don't know what the amount is, but if it's some amount, then all of a sudden it's intent to distribute.
But at the same time, a dealer could be going to someone's house with the exact amount ordered, and
Right.
they have the intent to distribute, but not hit with that charge.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's just law gone amok, and I think part of it is because the average person is so disinterested in politics that they would rather just outsource that to the people that have an interest in it. But unfortunately, most of the people that have an interest in politics have that interest because they want to make new laws. They like forcing others to do things.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I really want the ATF to formally define what makes up a pistol at this point.
I
Because
don't. I don't want the ATF doing jack shit. I want Congress to do that.
I do, because you know what? I want them screwed out of this, and I want the NFA to go away. But
Yeah.
what I mean by that is right now, some of the definitions say a weapon that you shoot two-handed is a rifle.
Mm-hmm.
If it has, well, I don't know about you, but I shoot my pistol two-handed.
Yeah, I think most
it's
people
not
shoot their
designed
pistol
to be shot-
two-handed.
It's not designed to be shot two-handed. You're using one grip.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not. They use a lot of effed up language and
They-
offer these
they do.
interpretations to their effed up language.
Yeah.
But then they are, being wishy-washy on and cause major problems for people.
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. military teaches you to use two hands when shooting a pistol. How can you define a pistol as something that's meant to be shot with one hand? It's not meant to be shot with one hand.
Well, because it only has one grip.
It hasn't been meant to be shot with. So do most rifles. It hasn't been meant to be shot with one hand ever since single action revolvers. That's the only pistol that you would shoot with one hand, because you need the other hand. Well, I guess you technically, if you have a thumb that's long enough, you may not need the other hand, but generally you'd use the other hand to actually rack it, to cock it rather.
Mhm.
So that's just asinine. I mean, it is literally people that know that what they're doing is incorrect, just trying to bludgeon a square peg into a round hole, and then go after anyone that dares to point out that there's something wrong here. Now, I would also say, if somebody asks you to cut off the barrel of a shotgun, just lend them your saw. Don't do it
Tell them
yourself.
cut right here.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, dude, that's even if you don't feel like telling them, hey, that would be illegal, but you're all for them doing it. Just say, here, you can borrow my tools.
Right. Well, but then could be a conspiracist. Someone who aided them in doing it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Aided
Which
them in the
again
commission
shouldn't
of a
be a
crime.
thing, because what the hell.
Right.
But but don't do it yourself. That seems to be a popular technique. And what is the hard on that they have for short barreled weapons to begin with?
This I don't understand. So, the reason why a short barrel shotgun is actually considered an NFA item is there was a trial where this was challenged, and there was no testimony saying that there was any military use for the firearm.
Mm-hmm.
Yet during World War One, the trench gun was a sawed-off shotgun.
Yep. Well, and there is I think, a limited benefit to having a shorter weapon when you're in confined spaces, right? I can see
Right.
that. But why would that be banned is my point. I was like, that there should be zero difference on whether something is a pistol or rifle in between. If there's a Second Amendment in place here, then any firearm is a
Well,
firearm.
and,
The
and you
barrel
know,
should not affect it.
for me, I actually like a longer barrel personally. Now, I'm
Yeah.
not planning on doing any CQB actions. And
Mm-hmm.
personally, I don't really want a fully automatic because I don't want to spend the money on the ammo.
Yeah.
And I can lay down pretty much as effective suppressing fire with a
Mm-hmm.
semi-automatic and a quick trigger finger. So it's a kind of a so what sort of thing. But to say these are more dangerous or anything else, no, they're not.
No.
But
Well,
the
do you
tool is
remember
the
the
tool is
history
the
of the
tool.
NFA, right? How we ended up with the restrictions or the short barrels being part of the NFA?
No, I don't know why
Okay,
short barrels were
I can
included
tell
in
you
the
that.
original.
I'll do a refresher here. So originally, when the NFA was being introduced, uh, it was in a large part, not fully, but it was motivated by the Chicago and other location mob crimes that were happening, to where the mob, having gotten rich off of running alcohol illegally, um, had the money to outfit
Now,
themselves. What?
Gene, why were they running alcohol illegally?
Because the U.S.
Surely they knew prohibition was a thing and they shouldn't have been doing
Yeah, exactly. But my point is, they were able to spend more money than police departments to outfit themselves and their I don't know what do you call them? Their armies, their lieutenants, their whatever. They
Well,
had better
and
weapons.
even yeah, I mean, it wasn't just the mob. Even the moonshiners, had better vehicles
Yeah.
than the
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
drivers and everything else. I mean, that's the origins of NASCAR, for example.
Exactly. It's yeah, that's exactly right. So when that amendment was debated, the original draft prohibited all pistols, and it included rifles which were shortened to pistol length. And that is the reason that we have this weird in between category, which is now prohibited, because in the final passage, that particular language was removed because they couldn't get enough congressmen to vote for it. So pistols were put back in. Originally, all pistols would have been prohibited. The only thing that Americans would have had that passed in their initial draft would be rifles. We would be essentially Canada. And all other weapons beyond rifles were prohibited. So because enough Congress critters realized their jobs were at stake here, they couldn't vote for that version. So the pistol uh, was taken out of the NFA. But what wasn't taken out was the language for short-barreled rifles and short-barreled shotguns. And so now we have this weird cutout in the middle. Pistol, okay. Pistol that's calibered in rifle, okay. Pistol that shoots shotgun shells, okay. Full-length rifle, okay. Full-length shotgun, okay. Middle-size shotgun, oh, prohibited. That's
Which, by the
controlled.
way, how is the judge not considered a short barrel shotgun? Oh, because it doesn't have a stock? Yet from a defensive weapon standpoint, it's the exact same thing, except
Yeah,
less manageable and less safe because you can't aim and manage recoil as well.
exactly. Exactly right. Yeah, a shotgun caliber without a stock is just literally disintegrating your wrist bones. It is stupid. I would never shoot. I've shot it a few times, but I would never shoot. And I don't mean the judge. I mean a 12 gauge. I shot a 12 gauge just with a pistol grip. Man, it is not pleasant. It's bad enough with a shooting a 12 gauge with a stock. It's way worse without a stock. And,
Yeah,
and
and the shotgun pistol has gone back in time for a long time.
mm-hmm,
Uh, you know, but again, as a defensive weapon, and here's what you got to ask yourself: when they want to remove pistols originally, the primary use of a pistol, in fact, the only use of a pistol from a military standpoint, is as a defensive weapon.
mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, most crimes are committed with pistols. Okay, that doesn't really matter. It's a defensive weapon.
Yeah.
And, reality, when you look at the NFA, when you look at the assault weapons ban, when you look at what Congress has tried to do over the last over 100 years now, is to remove the American people, whether that be the mob or citizens, in their ability to overpower the government. That
Mm-hmm.
is their fear. They don't want people, whatever that group is, whether it's a group of revolutionaries or a group of mobsters, to be able to overpower the government.
Yeah. And let me ask you, what was the whole intent of the Second Amendment to begin with?
To allow the people to be able to overpower the government.
Thank you. Exactly. So it shouldn't be a surprise that the default position, and the reason I keep saying default is because depending on the administration, depending on the prevailing political winds, the position does change over time, back and forth. It swings back and forth. But the default, when there's not a strong push for a minimalist view of the Second Amendment or the minimalist view of government, so a strong view of the Second Amendment, when that position is in place, the default is always how do we treat these criminals, aka American citizens, in a way that minimizes their rights? Like that is always where agencies like the FBI and certainly the ATF are trying to move towards. It's a I don't know. I mean, it's we've had these conversations so many times, but if the average IQ of this country just moved up by like 5 points, I feel like you wouldn't need a revolution because everybody would actually not vote for the idiots in charge right now. But given where we are and given that we can't control the stupidity of the population, it seems like there's a small number of people that are seeing what's actually happening, and they're the only ones that are trying to prevent the the country being turned into a prison.
And that we're losing that every day
Yeah,
to a very large extent.
exactly. And it's I mean, at this point, I really don't give a shit if California is a prison. Like, fuck those people. I don't care. Whatever. Um, I'm not even trying to save the whole country. I'm more worried about Texas.
Well, and you know, we should talk about this, but and we really should title this podcast, the revolution or something. I don't know, man.
Oh,
But
so everybody takes a drink, you mean?
yeah, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Civil, civil something. And since we're on YouTube, I guess I actually should watch what I say so we don't get our guys' channel strike.
Yeah. Well, I think
But
we're talking about all. YouTube
oh yeah.
doesn't care about any of these topics.
Well,
We just
one
can't
thing.
mention the companies that have provided quote unquote medicines that quote unquote may or may not work.
Yeah. So one talking about rubbing in our faces a little more. What do you think of this whole Chinese balloon thing?
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's probably good time to pivot to that. So what I wasn't aware of, first of all, it didn't look like one to me. I mean, it didn't have any Chinese characters in it. So I'm like, how's this Chinese? Apparently China has claimed that it was theirs. Okay,
Yes,
fair enough.
China has admitted.
Then I
They say
did a
it's a
little
civilian research balloon.
right. Then I did a little more research, and apparently there are military contractors for the US that for the last decade have been manufacturing and selling these things. I'm like, hold up. What how did I miss this whole segment of military tech? That I'm usually a fan of that stuff. I do a lot of like I check out all the new equipment that comes out at all the military shows. And somehow I had missed this whole segment of the balloon tech. Um it's very fascinating. It's interesting. These things can stay up in the sky for weeks.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
And what's also interesting is when you look at its course and everything, it went right over a lot of interesting Air Force bases. Um, maybe this one's performing surveillance, but we've
Mhm.
let more than one of these apparently go over our country.
Yeah,
And here's the thing: we didn't shoot it down until it was in the Atlantic.
I know. Which to me the
And
best
the
response.
liberals, have you seen the liberals all saying, "Oh, look at Biden, look how strong he
Yeah.
is,"
He
and
shot it down. The best response to that I think was from the Babylon Bee, of course, which once this thing had left the East Coast and was over US waters and then finally got nailed, uh, they put out a article saying how in a very decisive move President Biden took swift action to prevent a Chinese surveillance balloon from getting near Ukraine.
yeah. The two best memes that I've seen of this for the Chinese spy balloon. The first has Hunter Biden hanging by a bunch of balloons holding a
Mhm.
cross. A Chinese spy balloon.
Mhm.
Uh, and then the other one was, have you ever seen the old cartoon of Winnie the Pooh
Yeah.
flying on a balloon?
Yeah.
Well, it's Winnie the Pooh with
Yeah,
his face
ixnaying
on
the
it.
Winnie the Pooh, that's an illegal topic.
Why?
Because China will
In
put you on a
China?
list.
Dude, if you and I are on lists,
We're
it,
only on
it,
US lists, dude. I have no interest in being on Chinese lists.
hey, all I can say is if you're not on the lists, you're not doing it right.
Yeah. Well, that's true. Yeah, it is interesting, but I
Another thing that I thought was interesting is that since we're allowing these to fly over our country at around 80,000 feet,
yeah.
80 to 100,000 feet, which is prime area for an EMP,
Yeah.
talk about a delivery method.
Yeah, I don't
Okay,
think it would be
we've sent it. They haven't shut it down. We've said these are research balloons and so
right.
on. Put
Yeah.
an EMP on it. Get it over the center of the country.
Well, the thing is, it's not really our air. I mean, it depends. It depends on who you are and when you say it, whether it's our air at 80,000 feet, right? Because we flew uh, our shit. I'm blanking out the name of the plane.
SR-71.
Yeah, SR-71 at about 70,000 feet over Russia and China, nonstop for decades.
Yes, and they tried to shoot us down for
Yes,
decades
yes. And our
because we were in
argument was
violation of their
always that we're
airspace.
not actually flying over their airspace. We're flying above their airspace, is what we've always said.
Yeah, well, that's horseshit.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting too, because now that more countries, including Russia and China, have the capability to shoot down satellites, if they're going to start saying, "Hey, you fly over our airspace in a satellite? Too bad, it's getting shut down."
Yeah.
And I think that's inevitable. I mean, I'm just going to make a prediction because I think for too long there's been an assumption that the space treaty is going to be held up by everybody, but that only works in the absence of a world war.
Well, and that also, not to weaponize space.
Yeah, that's the treaty I'm
The
talking about.
Star Wars program was intended to weaponize space
Yeah.
while we were a signatory to that.
Yeah, that's totally true. Yeah. Yeah. And the the big mistake one of that Russia made in that instance was actually believing the propaganda of where the US was with all this. And instead of and really trying to develop their own countermeasures to that and bankrupting the country.
Yeah, which is why Russia today supplies the majority of the world's neon.
Yeah. Exactly. Not only also not only just that. But I don't know, man. I think that the fact that everybody, well, anybody who's paying attention anyway, knows that in Ukraine right now, the only communication network that is active is Starlink. It's the only way that Americans can send targets to Ukrainians to be able to shoot back. If it wasn't for
Yeah.
Starlink right now, this war would have been over probably 6 months ago.
Well, I don't think it was just Starlink. I think it's a lot of things. And the U.S., if we're going to go to the Ukraine thing, I don't know if you want to say any more about the balloon.
Well, do you have more to say about the balloon? We can talk about the balloon.
No, I just want to make sure you didn't. So with the Ukraine thing, now that we've said we're going to send a version of the M1 Abrams, but it's going to be over a year because we
Mhm.
have to do a couple things. A, we have to build some with non-classified technology in it,
Mhm.
and B, we have to develop the logistics bases in Europe for the support of the vehicle.
Mhm.
So I don't think those will ever see the Ukrainian battlefield. I don't think the Ukrainians are going to be able to outlast that.
No.
The item that is scary and is interesting that we have agreed to give them is F-16s.
Yeah, I don't think that'll make any difference.
I don't think it'll make any difference at all because I think the Russians have a lot of shit that, I mean, even
And
the equivalent MiGs are a very even match for the
yeah,
F-16. The Russians are not flying anything that the F-16 is an overwhelming
no.
match for. So, so you're going to put a bunch of pilots who are flying a new aircraft that, you know, the F-16 does have some interesting thrust vectoring stuff and everything else, but that's more complicated for the pilot to fly.
Mhm.
So the pilots are not going to be well enough trained to be able to take full advantage of the aircraft. So
Yeah.
they're inherently going to be at a disadvantage. So why are we doing this?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Again, I think a lot of it is just virtue signaling. I think sending a limited number of planes like this is a stupid decision because the only thing it's going to do is create more opportunity for Russian propaganda to demonstrate the ease with which these planes were shut down. Even if
Yeah,
it wasn't easy, but the propaganda will say that it was super easy.
why wouldn't they?
They would. That's my point. It's like, that makes no sense. This is why you don't want to send your latest greatest stuff in, and the same goes for Russia. Like, this is why they're not using calibers, because you don't want to have evidence that your latest greatest weapons don't work.
There are several things here that you have to take into context. And one of the things that you have to look at is the Germans sending some of their tanks and okaying that. Now,
Mm-hmm.
n- you know, that is a pretty good piece of machinery that they're sending by all accounts. And it's going to be interesting to see what impact they have. So they use a conventional diesel engine. There's a lot less maintenance required. They're not as fast as the Abrams. There's some other
I'm
things.
just wondering how long it's going to be, how long their lifetime is going to be once they cross over the border. I think it's going to be in hours.
Well, Yeah, if I'm Russia, I'm gonna launch cruise missiles and take them out as fast as possible.
$80,000 for the first one to blow one up.
Yep.
A lot of people are interested in $80,000.
Yeah.
I think, and then the
Oh,
joke was one of the things that somebody else posted. I retweeted on No Agenda Social was a video of a Russian guy laughing his ass off about how at $80,000 the Ukrainians are gonna blow the damn thing up themselves because they want the reward.
wouldn't surprise me.
It's like pfft, it's not gonna last an hour. So yeah,
So, so, one of the things about the Ukrainian conflict that I find really interesting, and one of the things that I wanted to bring up now that I've learned a little bit more to you, is why China and Russia trading is not as dangerous as it seems.
what
So,
dangerous for who?
listen to me. So, right now,
Well,
Russian oil, because of the Ukrainian sanctions,
uh-huh,
is being exported. So, the Russians don't have a deep enough water port outside of the conflict zone send oil to take a super tanker, right? So they
right.
can't get super tankers into their main two terminals to export oil.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result, China has rented several super tankers that they have put together in a flotilla off of um, Portugal,
Mm-hmm.
and they're using shuttle tankers to supply those super tankers, and then super tankers come, and they're doing sea to sea transfer,
Mm-hmm.
which is extremely dangerous under the best of conditions. And extremely potentially hazardous. There's high risk of environmental stuff, everything else, but it's happening in international waters,
Yeah.
so
So who
it's safe.
cares? Yep.
Well, what happens as soon as one of those shuttle tankers is captured,
Mm-hmm.
or Portugal says, "Hey, this is off our coast. We want to go take this flotilla."
Mm-hmm.
That supply line is then cut. So right now, to get
That's a
oil to
declaration of
China,
war.
right? But right now, to get that oil to
No,
China,
that's a declaration of war. That means
I,
that there
I,
will be instant response.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but you right now, the oil exports from China
Mm-hmm.
or from Russia to China is literally going via shuttle tanker to this supply depot to a super tanker that's then sailing around the Horn of Africa, coming back up to China in one of the world's longest supply chains.
Mm-hmm.
They do not have the ability to build a pipeline short of several years to a decade directly to China. And the environment to which they have to go through to build that pipeline is extremely hostile environments, deserts and the mountains and everything else between Russia and China. So
They
that is
they
a whole
have they
consideration.
have pipelines. They're just not high enough capacity.
They do not have pipelines directly to China.
Uh, there is. Yeah,
Maps.
there are.
If they are, they are teeny.
It's going through Mongolia.
Well, regardless, they can't supply a meaningful amount of oil to China except by sea. That's why they're doing this very expensive route to do it.
I think currently today, if they lost the ability to supply China um, through the sea, that would be an issue. But there are there are three pipelines going into China, and one more being built. And I think we're going to see a lot more going that way.
Well, but that takes a long time to build a pipeline.
Well, we're a year into the war already. I mean, there's a year of progress that's been made since the war started.
Okay, fair enough. But again, China and Russia do not have the blue water navies to protect that shipping. Is the
But
paradox.
again, it's irrelevant. Navies are irrelevant. The more I've read on this topic, the more I tend to agree with it. Because what you're doing is okay, here's the example. Let's say that you and I are in a conflict and you escalate by pulling out a knife. And then my response to that, I don't have a knife. I don't have a navy. But I have this stick of dynamite and we're 5 feet apart. Put down your knife or I'm going to light this.
Yeah, but if you do that, you're taking yourself out too.
But I can do that. You can't.
Except I have a stick of dynamite in my back
But you
pocket.
don't.
Ooh,
Well, I mean, you have a stick of that. No, you're right. You have it in your back pocket. Yes, you do. But you're not willing to light it.
Okay. Uh, so
I mean, this is the
the
thing that Americans always trump about is like danger of dealing with somebody who is a not a democracy, right? So the president of China, president for life, Putin, you know, he's a what do you call it? Uh, dictator.
despot
He's a
dictator.
dictator, right? So what's the difference between dictators and a government
I would
selected?
say I would say that he's a very popular dictator who, by all intents and purposes, has been elected.
Sure, sure. But I mean, I'm not saying he's a dictator. I'm saying this is what typically is said.
Mhm.
Hmm. Um, yeah. So, by the way, I got a message from the stream for you that you need to keep your mouth right next to the mic because you keep drifting away.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I don't think it's that. I think it's the compressor limiter
Yeah.
settings on the mic
So you'll have
is
to
screwing up.
fiddle with that, or just yeah. I mean, I think there's two issues, honestly, to
Yeah.
take a break from the
Okay.
Putin conversation. One is that yeah, we probably need to bump up your compressor limiter. The other one is the gate might be set a little bit too high, so that when you do take a breath or lean back,
Yeah,
it's not
that's
cutting
quite
in
a
early enough.
possibility.
Yeah.
Well, that or the attack isn't quick enough, but we'll
I
deal
put
with
yeah, I
that.
always put
And
those on 1 millisecond for both release and attack.
yeah, and we're going to play with settings. This is a new mic for
Right.
me, so I apologize, guys. But we're doing this test so that we, you know,
So we could keep
when
doing
I'm
the show when you're
traveling,
traveling. Exactly.
right? And if it absolutely wasn't working today, I could always fall back to the other rig.
Yeah. No, I mean it's okay. It's definitely quieter, and I will fix it in post for the podcast. So it's just really just for the live listeners that this is more annoying because I'm obviously louder than you are.
Yeah, so it's affecting 34 people right now.
Yes. That's 34 people that probably wouldn't have been listening otherwise.
Dude, that's great. Hey, I hope y'all like the conversation enough to subscribe.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. All right. So yeah, somebody just posted, no, fix it now. Uh-huh.
Yeah, you don't f with audio settings
In the
midstream
middle. Yeah,
because
exactly.
you risk making it much worse.
Yeah, yeah. Or spending the next hour dinking around with it and then resuming and forgetting what the hell you're talking about. I
Exactly.
know it's certainly good enough that in post this will be completely not an issue. So people that are listening to the podcast and our conversation about this topic are going, "What the hell are they talking about? They both sound exactly the same."
Yeah. Anyway, guys, I again
Yeah,
apologize, but Gene sprung the live stream on me, and I sprung the mic on him.
yeah,
So
exactly. That's how we work. We just try and screw with each other. So yeah, it's totally the case that right now there's not enough pipelines between China and Russia to transport the oil and natural gas that Russia would like to sell to China and China would like to buy from Russia. Because
well,
historically, they have not been particularly good friends. And this is something I think the US doesn't understand, or a lot of Americans don't, is that China and Russia have had a fairly frenemy relationships. It's been somewhat adversarial. They share a common border, but and used
and
to
to be
share a
clear,
common political system, but they've
well,
both moved on.
kind of. The USSR didn't trust Mao's version
No.
of communism at all. In
Hmm.
fact, they were quite rightly horrified by his staunch cultural revolution. Now,
Yeah.
something similar played out over a longer period of time in the USSR because of the nature of totalitarian politics, right? That's ingrained. But Mao went so hard, so
Yeah.
quick that it
Well, it
even
it it didn't really in the USSR. What was seen as negative is the products of Westernism, if you will. But there was always during the Soviet era, there was always a very strong pride in the history of accomplishments of Russia way before it ever became socialist or communist.
right. But what I'm referring to is the purges that went through every time the USSR changed leadership.
Oh
What you
yeah,
have to
yeah,
understand is that Mao did much, much more in one go.
all at
I
once.
mean, Mao's
Well,
order of magnitude
yeah, Mao
is
literally
literally an order of
erased.
magnitude over
It
anyone.
was a cultural revolution because he erased 3,000 years of Chinese culture. What we
Yes,
have now are just what was basically smuggled out.
yeah, and not only that, but he killed 100 million people while doing it.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy numbers. It's numbers that are hard to envision.
In fact, when you look at the demographics and you look at what China is going to, um, between Mao's Cultural Revolution and the one child policy, it very may well have doomed China
Yeah, I know that there is a. That's one of
from a
the.
demographic standpoint.
Yeah, one of the talking points of Zehan, but I don't think it'll have as much impact. I think China is adaptable. They've demonstrated that certainly over the last 20 years. And I think that they're going to be just fine. I think Japan got hit a lot harder with that than China did with the
But Japan did
demographic.
adapt, and they had a long time of peace to adapt. The Chinese are looking at having to adapt in a much shorter period of time under potential conflict. And you have to combine that with the fact that Xi has now, through his cult of personality, taken on more power than really anyone else in human history.
Mm-hmm.
More power is consolidated into Xi Jinping than anyone else in human history.
Yeah, that's why we don't talk about Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, those memes are so funny.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love it. In fact,
Yeah.
it makes me want to order a shit ton of Winnie the Pooh dolls to be manufactured in China, and then you know what? I don't want delivery of that. Y'all
Uh-huh.
sell them locally.
Well, they don't care. You paid for them already.
Uh,
No, it is kind of funny, and obviously there is some resemblance there. But also, I don't know that if you're gonna pick a cartoon character uh, to make fun of somebody, like Winnie the Pooh is a pretty cool dude. That's not really an insult.
uh, oh,
If somebody made a
how is it
cartoon
not?
character, says, "Oh, Gene, you look like Winnie the Pooh," I'm like, "Fuck yeah!"
But if you have the
I
personality of
like Honey. I have friends that are assholes, jackasses.
Jackasses.
So I mean, yeah, okay, fine, I'll take it. Winnie the Pooh.
I wonder who you're thinking is
Oh, I
doing
don't
it, but
know,
okay.
Ben.
Well, I certainly fit the jackass mold.
Uh-huh.
I'll give you that.
So yeah, no, it's what the hell did we leave things off? I don't remember what before we got interrupted by people saying that their audio ain't great.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
guys.
it'll be better. We'll get better next time we record on stream. And again, part of it is just because this would not be an issue at all for the podcast itself. This is just purely a stream related issue. So,
And we're starting at a different time than we normally would, just
yeah,
because I had,
yeah,
family here, so we had less
mm-hmm,
time to do our normal checks and everything else.
yeah.
Again, apologies.
That's all right. We all good. What else we got? We talked about the balloon. We talked about the Ruby Ridge stuff. Talked about the pistol brace bullshit that's happening.
Yeah. So one of the other topics I want to bring up in the Civil War narrative
All right, talk
is
loud.
is a guest that Tim had on Friday, which you said, "Hey, you got to watch this one.
Yeah,
It's a great episode," and
yeah.
indeed it was. So
I'm trying to get him for the podcast. I'm trying to interview him.
that'd be great.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear you interview him.
yeah, yeah.
So why don't you tell everybody about who was on Timcast?
Well, I can't remember his name because I suck at names. But it was the guy that was on Timcast. I could probably look him up. I don't want to do it real time. So if you want to do that, go for it. But basically, this is a guy that's, I guess, got notoriety, fame for being the
By
father.
the way, the guy's name is Jeff Younger.
That's right. Yeah, Jeff. Um, that he got notoriety for being the father of a kid whose mom is insane.
Of 2 fraternal twin little boys.
I thought he just had one. What?
No, there's 2 twins, 2 little boys. They're not identical, they're fraternal,
Oh, fraternal. Okay.
meaning they're twins, but they're not identical.
What?
Yep,
How did I just think it was one kid?
because it's only ever talked about the one kid.
Oh. Okay, well, you tell the
And the
damn
mom's
story
only
then.
trying to transition one of them.
Really? Okay, I thought it was they only had the one kid. I didn't realize there's two. Well, does the other kid make any? I mean, is there a point to knowing about the other kid or not?
That the mom is only transitioning the one.
That was the interesting thing for you. Okay, I didn't realize, but to me, the fact that a mom wants to transition a kid at 2 years old shows her certifiable insanity. That is just completely insane. And I don't remember who said this. The best comment that I heard about the whole transitioning thing is that all children that are prepubescent have a fuzzy understanding of what their sex's gender actually is. They're supposed
Well,
to. And the thing that
it,
fixes that is called puberty, because puberty
well,
releases the chemicals for the first time into the body that create that distinction, not just physically, but also mentally.
well, and it's not just that. Like my son, one of his cousins had a Barbie RV
Mm-hmm.
um, that she's letting him play with because he sees it as this big bus, is what he calls it,
Mm-hmm.
and he puts his tanks and his airplanes and stuff in the back and kind of rides around on it. He doesn't have any idea that it's a Barbie dollhouse thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not him wanting to play with Barbies. That's not him wanting to be a girl. That's, hey, it's a cool bus. It can haul my stuff. Great.
Yeah.
But
And
this woman would have said, "Oh, clearly he's wanting
I mean,
to
honestly, that what
express
the
his
hell's the
feelings."
difference between Barbie and action figures?
Or GI Joe. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And they're serving the same purpose. It's basically taking the kids' imagination, giving them some tools to play with, uh, and usually inspired by cartoons, which is why I'm so anti-Disney. Is those kid those that company has an into your kid's underdeveloped brain in a way that it shouldn't. Um, and then playing with
Well,
whatever's at hand. If
to be
you,
clear, it's not just Disney. It's any cartoon that you let your kids watch. You better pay
yeah,
attention to
well,
it.
the 1970s Hanna-Barbera cartoons were pretty fucking good.
Well, okay, but I'm talking about now. So whether that's YouTube,
Yeah,
even something like Miss Rachel, which have you ever seen
I
anything
don't know
about
what that
Miss
is.
Rachel?
No.
So Miss Rachel is a very popular YouTube channel that is geared towards uh, babies and toddlers and preschoolers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's songs for littles. And they do some basic animation, they sing
Mm-hmm.
kids songs. It's very innocuous until you're sitting there watching the third or fourth episode with your kid and this androgynous they them person comes
Mm.
on, and they don't do anything overt, but I immediately cut that crap out. Okay, cannot watch this anymore. And the reason why is because it's normalization.
Mm.
It is a biological female that looks like a boy
Mm-hmm.
that uses they them pronouns, and there's no to do made out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just pure normalization.
Yeah.
And that's fine. If you want your kid to watch that, that's fine. I choose to not allow my child to watch it. But the fact is, there is no rating that's going on, and there is no disclaimer that's going on, and it is insidious, and parents need to be very careful about handing their kids a tablet, handing their kids a TV, and just letting it play and leaving the room.
Yeah.
Never do that. You should know what your kids are watching.
Yeah. Because if you don't, what's the saying? That something will come home to roost. What the hell's that saying?
The chickens will come
Chickens.
home to
Chickens
roost.
come home to yeah, exactly. It's like
Uh,
you get what you create. Not
yeah.
necessarily
So,
deserve, but definitely what you create, which is you
so
ignore your kids' education thinking that the internet's going to do it for you,
or the
and
state.
then you have to live with the consequences.
Yes. So taking this back to Jeff Younger, so his wife, very early on, started basically wanting to transition one of his sons
Mm-hmm.
to be a girl. Um, Made him wear girls' clothing, made him grow his hair
At
out,
2 years
doing all
old,
these.
which is fucking
Yes.
insane.
And he took objection to that. This led to their divorce,
Mm-hmm.
which originally he ended up with 50-50 custody.
Yep.
And then she's found some activist law firms and so on to try and push this. And they've pushed it to an extreme point where literally they have removed his children from him.
Mm-hmm.
He has supervised visitation only, and she's moved to California, which is a sanctuary state for these sorts of things. And by the way, a state that says that they legally have to provide affirming care,
Mm-hmm.
anathema. Um, and he's really put in a position that I think is horrible. And I was talking this weekend with some people about it, and I just put myself in his shoes. Now, luckily, my wife would never do anything like
No.
this. But if I was in a different relationship and someone did this to me,
Yeah.
you could not stop me. Hell or high water would not stop me from going and getting my kid. I would be fleeing to a country without extradition. And heaven
Is
help
there
the
is there
person who
any of
tries to
those
get in my
left?
way.
I think with
I'm sure.
Assange, we realized they don't exist anymore.
You know, you wouldn't be so high of a political target
Yeah.
to do. Um, but to your point, yeah, you would be risking something. But at the same time,
Yeah,
if you're
I don't
not
know,
willing
dude.
to risk your life for your children, what are you willing to risk it for?
I think that I honestly think that there's only two choices there. One is to do nothing and just let it go. And the other one is to have those kids not have a mother.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but
I don't see any other choices. I mean, everything else in between is what he's done essentially, which is you still end up losing your kids.
yeah, and I'm not promoting violence here, but what I would say
No, there's
is,
no violence here at all.
it is not. You cannot put a man or anyone, a parent, cannot take their children away from them in such an egregious manner that is so counter to their beliefs. And he's an Orthodox Christian, so he probably goes further in this healing than I do.
Yeah.
And I mean, the fact that this this sort of thing, I think, will lead to states potentially breaking apart. Because if a citizen can kidnap someone and go to California and perform medical procedures against their will and the
Mhm.
other parent's will, which the in court testimony, one of the psychologists, court appointed psychologists, said that the son had said, mommy only loves me when I'm a girl.
Yeah, I'll repeat that because you cut out. Mummy only loves me when I'm a girl.
How sick is that?
No, she's insane. She's certifiable. Yeah, there's no two ways
So
about
the
it.
fact that that came out in court and she was still allowed to take the kids.
Yeah, and I've talked about this before. I think what we have is a system in court that is still based on assumptions that came out of the 1950s, and it hasn't been updated to match the current reality, which is that back in the 50s, when the mother was the 100% caregiver and the dad was expected to be the one going off to work, my mom stays at home. The kids saw the dad, you know, at dinner time, and he'd kiss him before bed. But for the most part, men were not particularly involved in their kids' lives uh, unless they wanted to be. And that was the cultural norm.
Well, and really up until the kids got old enough to maybe go hunting or
Yeah,
fishing or do something
exactly.
with dad
With
on
that. Yep.
his leisure time,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So in that scenario, it would be logical to maintain that the kids stay with the mom 99% of the time, with the rare exception, and that the dad just has, partial access to those kids, if any. But what we have today is completely different from that. We have the kids seeing mom just as little as they see dad. Uh, there's
Probably going to a
nothing
daycare somewhere.
there. Yeah, there is in most families, including like perfectly healthy, normal families. I'm not talking about people that are kind of fucked in the head. I mean, like friends of mine, people that have kids. If you ask that kid, do you do you spend more time with your mom or with your dad? It's going to be 50-50. It's and then the answer is generally going to be with my phone. It's not going to be with either parent. It's going to be predominantly with an inanimate device that has become a surrogate parent to the kids, and we all know the problems that that can cause as well.
Yeah.
But still, then during divorce, looking at through the court system through this lens of 1950s family, of course you can't tear the kids away from the mom, and if the mom wants to dress the kid up as a girl, it's probably because the mom knows better what the kid wants than the dad, so the dad shouldn't matter in this situation. That It's a disconnect. It's a disconnect between the court rulings, the way that they're used to perceiving this. Like the courts for this, for parental rights issues, it's one of the last bastions where the courts are extremely sexist across the board. Like sex plays the biggest part in determining parental access to children, and it
Well, and
shouldn't.
something that came out on the IRL podcast that Timcast IRL that I didn't realize is that there's very little room for appeal in family court, which is
Hmm.
just insane to me.
Yeah, yeah. It is it is absolutely bad. Um, And I think genuinely this is not even an issue of like the dad wants to take the kids away from the mother. It's like the dad wants to prevent the kids from being fucked up for the rest of their lives, which the mom is going to achieve.
Well, and
I wouldn't be
he has
surprised if that kid commits suicide, frankly.
well, what it comes down to is he has even said that, hey, I just don't want this to happen to my son at an early age.
Hmm.
If he really is something and wants to do that as an adult, then that's on him.
Well,
He's still
sure.
my
Yeah.
he's still my kid. But to do something, and I think this is the entire argument that you and I have had and brought up, is that we aren't. I, for one, believe as a free person, you own your body and you should be able to ingest anything and do
Exactly.
anything you want to your own body,
Yeah.
but you should do it as an adult.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've also said that, I don't believe kids are sentient until somewhere in the 6 to 8 years old. Um, so yeah, I just think it's a despicable, disgraceful thing that has happened here. It is a clearly crazy mother, and some of the other stuff that he brought up about her past kind of lends credence to that. Um, the uh, the drug addiction and everything else. That she is literally just creating a condition where he's forced to see uh, his son's life be turned to total shit and potentially suicide. I think there's the odds of that kid having suicide are tremendously higher than the average American.
Well, so the kid's Gen Z, so he's gonna have that anyway. But you know, hey, most medicated generation ever.
It really
Um,
is. It's amazing. The biggest drug user generation.
yeah, I mean, insanity makes the '60s look like nothing. It's just prescriptions, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
we've just turned prescriptions into, well, you know what? It really, I think, is similar to the turn of the 20th century, to where opium was not a prescription substance, to where um, there was a lot of kooky doctors out there. Let's put it that way.
yeah, a lot of elixirs and things like that.
Hmm. Yep. It was a
Well,
lot more of a free for all, and also that precipitated the the fact that we ended up with prohibition is because there was so much partaking of the alcohol.
well,
A lot of people were
good.
self-medicating.
Oh, yes, and the whole temperance movement was born out of, the very aggressive overindulgence of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the 20s and, or turn of the last century or previous century, um, it was not uncommon for people to drink literally all day,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which, today you'd be seen as an alcoholic.
Well, yeah, that's why they called soda soft drinks, because that make fun of people that would drink something that isn't hard.
Well, and it's funny because some of those soft drinks, Coca-Cola in
Had
particular,
cocaine.
had cocaine in
I
them.
know, right? It was much more healthy, and it probably is more healthy in the dosage of cocaine that it used to have. It probably was a much more healthy drink than whiskey.
Probably, probably.
Yeah. Still gave you a little bit of zing. It's crazy stuff. But one other thing in that particular podcast that really jumped out at me is the first time I saw Libby Emmons say something stupid.
Well, then
I
you haven't
generally
been paying
liked her.
attention very much.
I've generally liked her articles. I think she's one of the main writers for Post Millennial.
He's the editor in chief.
Yeah, there you go. And I haven't heard anything that she said that seems to strike me as what the fuck until when Jeff mentioned that something I've said before as well, that the only way for a man to ensure that he has full control of his kid is to get that kid through a surrogate. And oh my God, that
Yeah.
just set off a bomb reaction from her mouth. It's like,
Well,
that's an abomination. That should be illegal. No woman should be made to go through doing something for a man. I was like, whoa, third wave feminist all of a sudden. Holy shit.
beware beware wolves in sheep's clothing, my friend. And what I would say is his response there is absolutely, the MGTOW response.
Uh-huh.
And I understand where it's coming from as a reaction
Mm-hmm.
to that third wave feminism, but I think it is the wrong answer to the problem.
I don't agree with that. I'm closer to his age, and I would say that a man who has established financial how do I phrase this? Who's financially set is much more than capable of having a child with a surrogate than giving away half or more of his money and potentially all of his kids' future control to some rando slut.
Yeah, well, what I would say is that the
Nuclear
family
family.
nucleus,
Yeah.
yes, is very important, right? Kids need a mother and a father. They need a mother who is nurturing, they need a mother who
Mm-hmm.
is always kind, and they need a somewhat of a hard ass father who
Mm-hmm.
says, yeah, no, you need to actually do something. You need a balance there.
Yeah.
And one person cannot do both sides of that coin,
I totally
at
agree.
least
That's
not
why I
very
said a
well.
man who's financially set. And the way that this used to work for families with money in the past is the kids were never brought up by the mothers. They were brought up by the au pairs. They were brought up by people that are working. Essentially, they're paid to be there for the kids, with the kids, to ensure that they're not misbehaving, but also that their education is going through. And then they're sent off to boarding school after that. So
Yeah,
it
I don't think the
we've lost
aristocrats
this.
did a very good job of raising.
I don't know about that. I mean, they managed to hang on to power pretty well. Um, the the this idea that just because somebody is of the female sex, that somehow the kids are better off with that person, and when she's struggling to make ends meet, is, I think, again, it's looking at the world through 1950s glasses when the current world is not the case.
Yeah,
A lot
and
of
to
my
be clear, his
friends,
wife is not struggling. She is a doctor
yeah, no, she
from
absolutely. In this situation, both of them have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on lawyers. There's no two ways about this particular situation. Um, but I think in general, the idea that that Libby was so against. So that was my main point, is that I think surrogacy is great. It is a time honored profession, if you will. It goes back literally thousands of years. The idea that if somebody is capable of conceiving a child for somebody who's not, and then providing that child to them, is very old. And surrogacy in this case is the same thing. It's just that it's not a lack of sperm count that is the problem. It's the fact that uh, the in this example that he brought up is that the guy doesn't want to risk the future of the kid. There's nothing
Or
wrong
his
with that.
future.
And I don't think that somebody, let's put it this way, somebody that can afford to pay a surrogate $40,000 is likely capable of providing for the child.
Yeah, and, here's the thing though, and the chat pointed this out. The mother is a pediatrician, so what other kids is she doing this to behind
Yeah.
parents' backs?
Yeah. I mean, this is it is a it's definitely seems more like a fetish than rational thought to me. That the mother is fetishizing having girls over boys.
Well, and maybe she really wanted a girl, or it could be that she wants to virtue signal and say,
Mhm.
"Oh, look at me! I have I'm dealing
Maybe it's
with
good for her
this."
career.
Exactly, especially now that she's moved to California.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the other lesson learned here, talking about MGTOW topic here, is that if the nature of men's and women's relationships has changed the way that it has, meaning you're not marrying a virgin and you're not staying married forever, because divorce is super easy. It's no fault. You could trigger it at any point in time for any reason.
Thank you, Reagan.
Yeah. Uh, because that's the case. And by the way, I think that it should be no fault. I don't think that that's a problem. I don't think that marriage is the purview of the government. I don't think the government ought to be the ones that are officiating marriages. That marriage is a spiritual connection, not a governmental one.
Well,
But
the government has no business in marriage.
yeah,
You know my views on that.
exactly.
And for the people in the audience that haven't heard my views on this beforehand, I'll just say I take my views on the government having no business in marriage and say, when I got married, um, my wife and I had a religious ceremony, and then we went to the state and filed a declaration of marriage because I
Hmm.
would be damned if I was going to ask the state for permission to marry.
Right.
None of their business.
Yeah. And I got married at Renaissance Fair by a voodoo priest or something. I don't know, whatever. Middle Ages priest. So I, in the end, I think the problem lies in that uh, that marriage isn't what it used to be. It's just not the same thing anymore. It still has the name marriage, but it's a different thing these days. And so, if we're going to have marriage be different, then why should the other related things, like who has the kid, or even just the ability to pay a surrogate to have your kid, why should those things be um, not reconsidered as well? Why should they be regarded in the same light that they would have been in the 50s? In the 50s, I think the majority opinion was that what Libby expressed is kind of the 1950s opinion. That
Yeah.
it's horrible to imagine that a woman is carrying somebody else's child, because the children are something that's a product of marriage.
What I'd say is that we're really third wave feminism, especially, is straining um, the benefits of marriage to men, and that's why you have groups like MGTOW and
Yeah.
even Eugene forming some of the opinions you have. Um, my thought and my answer to that is, hey, we have to say that this is a mutually beneficial relationship and
Yeah.
define those terms and what it means and agree upon it. And right now, as a society, we don't, and that is a huge problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's for most animals, the father is not involved in the raising of the child. Now, some animals are
The father is also not involved in providing for the mother in the same way.
at all. Yeah, I mean they're but for some animals they are. I mean it really kind of depends, right? There's some animals that completely share those tasks. Other animals are like bang them and leave them, as it were.
Right.
Um, so it's like there's arguments for both, but what you can't have is the female acting like it's the bang 'em and leave 'em situation, but then expecting that the father be providing. And the father, uh, if he's interested in having kids, shouldn't be placing his trust in a female that just doesn't want to be with him forever. I mean, that's the trade-off, in my opinion, right? Is that if you want to be if you want to have somebody take care and support you, then you need to be there for the duration, for the long haul. What you can't
On
do,
both sides.
well, yeah, but I mean, that providing is usually coming from the one side, not the other side. Um, I'm a lot less concerned about men getting the minority position here. It's kind of like the arguments, just to shift gears a little bit here. The whole argument about that lately has been we've talked about on the YouTube channel of trafficking and what does it mean, and these creepy guys in their 30s getting to relationships with somebody who's 17 or 18 or 19 years old, and it's like, is that trafficking automatically, or is it just probably traffic? It's like you take that situation and you reverse it. Like when I was 19, I was dating a 28-year-old. I was the happiest guy ever because guys are not like girls. For a guy, it is not trafficking to be dating somebody who's 10 years older than you, who's 1.5 times older than you. Like for a guy, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
So when you finish your thought, I have a story on this.
yeah, well, I was just going to say, going back to the 50s, a lot of fathers brought their boys to whorehouses to learn how to have sex so that when they finally get married, they know what they're doing with the girl who's doing it for the first time. Because nothing's worse than two kids that both are having sex for the first time.
So when I was in college, I graduated high school at a very young age.
Yeah, you were what, 12?
16.
Uh-huh.
And I, started dating this girl, and we drove up on a hill that overlooked the town. Kind of cliche. We were just sitting there talking. We weren't actually
Mm-hmm.
even doing anything. But a cop came up and, you know, knocked on the window and, hey, what's going on here? And asked for our IDs, which, we gave them at the time. I probably wouldn't have today. But anyway, we gave him the IDs and he said, son, can you step out of the car, please?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, officer, what's the problem? And he got me away from the vehicle and he said, well, since she's 19 and you're 16, I have to ask, are you here of your own free will and volition? And looked at the officer and I said, "Sir, did you see the girl in the car?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Well, there's your answer."
Exactly. And
Yeah.
and I think for guys that is generally like there's not a downside of being with an older woman to a guy that I can think of anyway. When you're that age. I mean there is once you start getting older, then there is a downside. But when you're in your teens or early 20s, being with a woman who's a decade older than you is like, this is great. This is actually a benefit. Um, so I don't know. And but if you flip it, it's like 30-year-old guy with or even in your scenario, right? So 19-year-old guy with a 16-year-old girl. It's kind of like, what the fuck's wrong with this guy? What is he like lacking 18 and 19-year-old girls that he has to go get with someone who's 16?
Well, in today's society, he's going to jail.
Yeah, most likely. Although I think some states still have some laws that wouldn't make that illegal, but yeah. It is a bit nuts. But again, my point is first starting with the libertarian premise that if you own your body, you ought to have the ability to get paid for having a kid for somebody else. So saying women shouldn't be ever,
Well, that it should be illegal is just
which is what she said. She said it should be illegal to be a surrogate. So she's taking all agency away from the woman and putting it in the control of the state. Wow, that is so post-millennial. That's insane. Beyond that,
literally.
right? I mean, it's like that position just seems contrary to what that whole publication is putting out. And it's an irrational position and clearly triggered giving her response by some past incident. And I don't know if she knew somebody or there's somebody in her family or maybe it was her, but something happened in her
Yeah, it
past.
was an emotional reaction.
Yes, it was a very emotional reaction. And it was a vitriol reaction. She was visibly just demonstrated a hatred of the concept of having a child for somebody else, which is very interesting because you're not well. I mean, I shouldn't say you're not supposed to, but in my mind, in my rational thinking, you don't have a child out of selfishness. You don't have a child because you want a plaything. You have a child for their benefit. You're sacrificing the rest of your life to be able to provide to that child. You're not having a child so you have something that you can have in your Instagram photos.
Well, I mean, I'll say this. I think having a child is one of the most arrogant things you can ever do because ultimately, if you're a good parent, you want your kids to grow up and be like you, but better than you,
Mm-hmm.
and that they are your legacy.
Yeah.
And you want them to go out into the world and be strong. And, you know, how arrogant of you to think that you're going to succeed at that. But, you know, what you do.
Well, yeah. I mean, arrogant, but again, so to me, this was just like a big disappointment in Libby, a surprising disappointment in Libby. And I had to compliment Jeff and say, dude, you handled that really well. You didn't take her bait and jump in and confront her, which is what I would have probably done. Started pointing out the hypocrisy in her position, but instead he just sort of let it go and said, well, the problem is that the way laws are right now, this is literally like the only way for a man to ensure that nobody fucks with his kids. That if he is the sole caregiver legally to the children.
Well, and let's be clear, surrogacy laws vary by state, and there is a lot of ambiguity to a lot
Mm-hmm.
of them. So it's not a guaranteed thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And somebody in chat said, my mother always told me never to depend on a man, and I never have. So I totally agree with that. I think that every woman needs to have that capability. I think it is important to be able to be self-sufficient for both men and women. And we've seen this. I mean, the best example of this is Rosie the Riveter during World War II, right? Is
Well,
that the men go off to fight the war. The women just don't kick back and lounge and watch TV.
and say, "Oh, woe is me."
Yeah.
And you know what I would say is everyone should not be dependent upon anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be an independent individual, but when you get married and you come together, you are becoming dependent upon each other.
Yeah.
You're dependent upon, as a man, your wife to help raise the kids, help run the house if you're the one providing, or vice versa. I don't really care what the roles are, but ideally, someone is providing care for the kids while the other is providing care for the family.
Yeah,
And
you're
coming
interdependent. I mean, this is the bit
yes, you're
that seems to be missing here is that you have financial dependence on one side and you have plenty of other dependence on the other side,
absolutely.
even without kids. Let's even look at a marriage without kids. Uh, while you're married, as a man, you're
Even if you're a
absolutely
two-income household,
you're depending on
you're
your
both
wife.
working.
Well, but okay, that's physical stuff. But even beyond that, I'll tell you, just from personal experience, what did I depend on my wife for tremendously? I had an extremely stressful job. I was mostly dealing with getting lawsuits settled and ensuring that there was contractual obligations were being met. I was constantly dealing with parties that were disagreeing with each other. So one of the things I depend on is fucking sanity. When I go home, I want to have an experience that is going to make me feel better, not worse, right? And this is something that um, that having a spouse versus just being single was absolutely the case. Because if I was not married and I was going through that kind of experience, what am I going to do when I get home? Well, I'm either going to go, at least back then, right? I'm old. So I would go to a bar or I would go, someplace, maybe hang out with some friends I knew. But it was essentially to just burn off some energy, maybe meet some new girls, something like that. But it wasn't going to fulfill the same role that coming home to your wife fulfills, like that comfort feeling, like that comfortable conversation, that kind of decompression. And conversely, it doesn't have to be in that direction. You could have a wife who's a lawyer and a husband who's an artist, and then she's coming home to her husband and she's getting the same kind of relief. There's a benefit even before the kids happen in a marriage, in a solid relationship
In a
like that.
healthy relationship.
Yeah, healthy
And
relationship.
and even if like both parties are working, if you have a healthy relationship and you come home and you're able to set aside work and focus on your life together, like you
Mhm.
said, there's just a comfort in that that isn't met by a girlfriend, isn't met by someone you're not sharing your life fully with. Now, if you have a living girlfriend of 5 years and you're virtually married, I mean, I would say you're performing the functions of a marriage without putting the title on it. So,
Mhm.
whatever. I won't get drawn into that particular semantic game. Um, but yeah. Anyway, man, anything else you want to cover today?
No, it sounds like you gotta get going here and you wanna wrap up. I'm good. I think
No, no,
we
no.
got
I'm
through
just
the
wondering. Yeah, I think we beat this topic to death.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. No, I
you want to
think
talk about Chat GPT?
uh sure. What do you want to say? That it's like liberalist?
Well, I mean, there's lots of things, but what it comes down to is all we're talking about here is a lot of fancy curve fitting algorithms. We're
Mhm.
not talking about creative thought. And people really need to understand, and I'm sure Comic Strip Blogger is going to try and roast me on this one. But essentially, you have a bunch of Bayesian derivations, and sometimes you'll have multiple derivations
Mhm.
layered on top. But all you have is the ability to analyze data in a logical manner.
Yeah.
There is no room for creativity. So, like the idea that ChatGPT is going to replace a bunch of people's jobs or something
Oh,
like
it's
that,
totally gonna do that.
if
That
your job is pure analysis, then yeah,
Oh,
it probably should be.
no, no,
But
no. I think
if
it's
you're
gonna
not enough of a creative at work, then yeah.
Yeah, I disagree. I think it's going to replace a whole bunch of jobs. I think artists as well as writers, and thankfully it's going to replace a whole bunch of marketing jobs. Because the thing that I think a lot of people don't understand, I understand this because I've taken years and years of marketing courses, but the thing that most people don't understand is that marketing is not about creativity, which is what the marketing people would like you to think. Marketing is about rules, and it is building ads that follow the rules that lead to an action that you're trying to achieve. And the better you are at being able to stay within those rules, the better success you're going to have at getting people to do what you want. Whether it's asking people for donation on YouTube or whether it's trying to sell a car, it is about following the rules that will guide that person to make the decision you want them to make. And this is a perfect example where Chat GPT, or really GPT-4, is going to be really, I think, taking over a lot of jobs.
So, what I would say is that if your job is derivative at best, then sure, your job might be in danger. But if your job is innovative and you are doing something different than what has been done before. Current artificial intelligence is not capable of original thought.
But it doesn't have to be. It's like Photoshop. It's like saying Photoshop is not capable of original thought. Doesn't matter. The amount of marketing that a person can do with Photoshop versus without Photoshop is a huge difference. And that's what ChatGPT is. It's a way, or any really AI tech, whether it's images or text or music or anything else. Well, right now there are sources of new music that doesn't have copyright coming out of AI, which is great because for how long have we been bitching about? Oh, you can't use that. That's a copyright. You have to pay that licensing fee. Well, because some human had to do it. But as soon as we take the humans out of the equation, we have free music, and that's awesome. So I think a lot of things that people are assuming are creative endeavors really are going to get replaced by GPT. And I know I'm sure there are people disagree. Maybe you're one of them. But I just look at all of these things as tools. Before we had computers, we had abacuses. Well, at least in Asia we did. We didn't have them in Europe. But we had other means to help us do math faster. And then it's it's true of everything. Like before we had industrial robots, we had just man operated pneumatic tools, and before that we had just metal wrenches and things, and before that we just had pieces of sticks that we could use as levers. Like we've always been trying to improve the capabilities of people, and AI is doing exactly that.
Yeah, sure. And, what I'm saying is it would be very difficult for an AI to even do something what I would consider is fairly simple as a layered security architecture that had any innovation to it.
Mhm.
So could it take a standard and say, okay, I'm going to apply this standard and replicate it? Sure. Is it going to come up with a new and inventive way of meeting or writing the standard? No.
It might. It might, and I'll tell you why. Is because in in optimizing and putting together a variety of previous attempts to do so, it may come up with a way of doing it that hadn't been done by humans, but could be. It's not to say that it's doing something that humans couldn't do, but it can do these analysis a lot faster internally, and it can come up with some. In fact, you could probably force it to do this by saying, put together a standard that isn't any of the previously defined standards, but that achieves this particular purpose.
Well, we'll see. I think it's a lot less impressive than apparently the rest of the world finds it.
I don't think it's impressive. I agree with you. I don't think it's impressive. I see it as a tool. Most people don't. Most people see it as fucking magic. It's not magic. I mean, I've played
Well,
around with this stuff.
well, you know what that tells me? Anyone who thinks Chat GPT is magic has an insufficient understanding of technology.
That's a very good way of phrasing it. Gee, I wonder if anyone's ever said that before. Um, and this is one of the advantages, right? So you read books voraciously. You're a big reader. I not so much on my side. I'm still on the same audiobook that I was on 6 months ago. Because I typically do other things. But if you look at all the books you read, uh, putting all of those books into the AI database of reference material could take a second or two. And then all the other books you haven't read, literally all of them, could be added in the next few hours.
Yeah,
So clearly, as a tool, there's a huge advantage here.
Yeah, but how do you have AI understand? So let's take a very simple book, Ayn Rand's Anthem, short
Mm-hmm.
120-page book. How
Yep.
is AI going to interpret that book?
Well, the AI isn't going to interpret it. The AI will have the
Exactly. It is
synthesis
not.
of.
It's going to miss the entire point of the book
Well, you
because
can't
the
miss the
AI does
point of the
not
book.
have a it can because the entire point of that book is the forbidden word. Spoiler alert for people who haven't read it. Is I.
Yeah,
I. Individual agency.
yeah. I mean, it's a pretty obvious point. I think you could pick it up in the first 3 pages. I think. But I think that I'm trying to pull up the OpenAI right now so I can literally type in what you just said. Okay. Summarize the book Anthem by Ayn Rand. Let's see what it gives us. That's dead air is always fun.
Yeah. By the
Anthem by
way,
Ayn Rand is a dystopian novel set in the future society where individualism and personal freedoms are suppressed. The story follows the journey of a man named Equality 72521 as he discovers the truth about his society and rebels against the oppressive rule. Through his experiences, Rand presents a philosophy of objectivism, which advocates for self interest, individual rights, and the pursuit of happiness. The novel explores themes of freedom, independence, and importance of the individual versus the collective. So that is the summary of Anthem by Ayn Rand from AI.
which was pulled from human sources.
Of course, all of it is. It has to be. It can't think. It can only read
Which
what's
is my
been done
point.
beforehand.
Exactly.
But it's not meant to. It's
So my
that's
point is,
magic. Thinking is magic.
I will take notice of AI when it can read a book and come
Mhm.
up with a synopsis that makes sense to me as a human reader
Mhm.
without reading other human synopses.
Okay. And I will say that that is equivalent to taking a child that lived on a desert island with no other human companionship and doesn't speak a word of any language and presenting them with the same book and seeing what they come up with. AI is
After you teach, yes, I agree. After you teach them to read.
well, that's what you're doing with AI. You're giving them access to the entirety of human thought.
I think we're playing a semantic game and disagreeing, but that's fine.
I don't know, man. I mean, I'm like the definition of what AI is simply combining the past output of humans and then synthesizing it into something that is relevant to the question being presented. It's not magic. It's something that any human that is, given enough time could be able to do as well. Like what I meant when I just asked Chat GPT here to summarize that book is what every 11th grader used to be. I don't know if that's the case anymore. We typically read that book in 11th grade.
See, and I was going to totally say it sounded like an eighth grade book report.
It is. That's exactly right. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
By the way, I have a T-shirt that has equality 7 whatever the number is on the front.
72521. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's an OD green T-shirt, and then that's printed in letters on it. I love that T-shirt.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, very few people get it.
I right.
Also have a Howard Rourke architect T-shirt.
I bet you do. Well, that's good. Start coming up with T-shirt ideas because we're going to be cranking out more different T-shirt designs here. So that's
Man, I gotta say,
it'll be a thing.
you kind of sprung this on me, and I was a little apprehensive of doing the podcast
Mhm.
live like this. But at the same time, the little bit of chat interaction we had and everything else,
Mhm.
I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
I really do.
I started doing this on Unrelenting when we first started Unrelenting like a year ago, and the only problem was that
Where's yesterday's episode?
what? Oh yeah, yeah.
Where's
So
the
there
episode?
wasn't one yesterday. Yeah, Darren had some AFib stuff.
Ooh, not good.
Yeah, yeah. He's been
okay?
having some issues. I've been providing my non-medical advice to him, so hopefully he'll be better. I sent him a whole slew of non-prescription things to take.
Yeah. I worry about him, man.
Yeah, well, you know, I worry about everybody.
All right, Gene.
Humans are very fragile.
Yes, we are.
We've done this for
In
years.
a multitude of ways.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think this is a good place to wrap it up. Unless you got anything else.
No, we're at our 2-hour mark, so it works for me.
Awesome. All right. So obviously, as we mentioned during the episode, to anybody that's listening to this on the podcast, this has been slightly different in terms of the conversation because you've gotten some behind the scenes how the sausage is made stuff. Partly because we're changing things, and partly because this is also was streamed live on YouTube. If you want to listen to this next episode being streamed live as it's being recorded on YouTube, hopefully with fewer problems, then simply look at the link in this episode, which will have a link to where to go to watch it on YouTube. And where it's being streamed is the Griftcast IRL YouTube channel. And again, the link will be in the show notes for the podcast. Thanks for listening.
Thank y'all. See you, Gene.
All right. Perfect. We are done. Thanks to all the people listening live. Hopefully it was at least somewhat enjoyable. I know I didn't really converse with you all. And Ben actually probably did more of that. And looking at the chat, I was just focused on the podcast itself for the most part. But I'm going to do this with this as well as other podcasts I do as much as I can, just to give some more content to the channel and to give people that maybe haven't listened to the podcasts an opportunity to see if it's something you want to subscribe to or not. And if you do want to subscribe to it, the links are definitely in the link. What the hell is it called? The link something or other. Link list? Is that what it is? I don't know. You all know what I'm talking about.
You ought to unmute your buddy so he can.
Oh yeah.
That's what it
let
is.
me. If Defanger, if you're there, let me unmute you just one sec here. We'll bring you in as well. So he is. Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, I got to turn him on. Hey, Defango, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
He's talking, but I don't hear him.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
To your audio routing, Gene.
I can hear you.
No, there we go. Now you can hear him. Hello, Defango?
Yeah, I'm here. What's up?
There he is. All right. I don't know. Ben, you wanted to say hi?
Hey,
what? I was just sitting here enjoying all this free content.
Sounds like you're eating too.
And I'm eating, so you caught me right when I was eating, but I was just like driving around, so I was listening to this shit in my car. Yeah, definitely. I don't know what it was up with his mic, man, but that was weird.
Clearly lost.
He would just be like good audio and then go bad audio.
Yeah, I can hear you, Ben.
Okay, well, I can't hear Defango.
Oh, you can't hear Defango. Okay, so maybe that piece of routing I still don't have worked out here.
Well, we can work it out.
We can work it out.
Next time, what we ought to do is instead of you kind of being the middleman,
Yeah.
I was noticing a lot of lag between what we were talking about in the chat.
Oh yeah, there is.
Is we ought to do simultaneous, recordings and cast.
Yeah. We could totally bring you in into the video stream as well. That way, it's all in one system instead of being because I'm running both Zencaster and the stream studio here.
And then that way, your audio routing wouldn't be a problem.
Then it would be pretty straightforward. Exactly. But if we do that, the only thing we need to make sure we do is that there's no other audio on the stream because we want to make sure we have a clean copy of everything for the podcast.
Yep.
But anyway, so yeah, Defango, he cannot hear you, but you can hear him, and I can hear you, and I can hear everybody. But we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I will probably see you later tonight. Maybe. We'll see. And then Ben, I will talk to you over the course of the week, or if nothing else, then a week from now.
Sounds good.
All right. Take care. All righty.
Oh yeah.
So this was the first. So I've dropped off of Ben here. So this is the first attempt at doing this kind of parallel streaming thing, and I'm sure there'll be some more glitches and issues to work out over the course of. Oh, hey, thanks for the super chat. Over the next few times I attempt to do it, but my goal is to be able to take all the podcasts that I do and do live stream versions of them while they're happening. Like I said, for a variety of reasons, I think it's going to be interesting to do. Adds a little bit more complexity to my end of things, but if we can get everything working out of the Restream studio, then that probably won't be any more complicated for me.
Well, that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, I think it was fun. So do you have any here, hang on one second, I'm gonna switch you. Okay, now I think you'll have no echo. Say something.
Hello?
Okay. Yeah, so do you have any thoughts on any of the topics we covered? Any immediate reactions?
Not exactly. I was actually working on merch and trying to figure out what's going on with that last alert that just didn't come through.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I noticed that the chat wasn't working initially. You were trying to get some help desk stuff going.
Yeah, I was working on
And
some stuff.
you saw my feedback to him, right? I was like, why would you have noise in a studio app for doing help? That's just so stupid.
Yeah, right. Like, why do you have
Ding,
noise?
ding, ding. It's like, dude, if we're getting help, there's a pretty good chance it's happening while we're streaming live. We don't need your dings going through. Kind of wild.
Yeah, it is a little bit weird.
Yeah. So, and just for the folks that were listening, one for you as well. So I do 2 podcasts typically at the same time every week, same day of the week. Those are fairly regular, so that'll pop into an actual schedule moving forward. And then my third podcast is a kind of a floater. I do that one. That's my one-on-one interview one. That one I try to schedule when it's more convenient for the guest, so that may end up floating around. If the stream's available, I'll do it on the stream. If DeFango's doing something on the stream at that point in time, then I'll just do it off stream. But whenever possible, I'll try and do the live stream versions of the podcast as well.
Hell yeah, dude. That's actually pretty dope.
Yeah, I'm digging it.
I think people are gonna like it. I mean, we had a pretty consistent amount. I think we got to 10 people at Rumble. Yeah, like 30, 35 people up in here.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, and I gotta get Ben the Rumble link as well because I don't think he had that, so he wasn't looking at it at all. But yeah, after a while, I think he was looking more at the chat than I was.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is that's what he'll do. So like you'll have him in the chat, reading the chat.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, you should just do the podcast like you're normally recording it, and maybe just like record it from OBS.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
then,
exactly. Well, and I don't even need to do that. I'll just if he comes in through OBS, then I can just run the local recorder here instead of Zencaster. So it's just going to record my mic and the OBS audio, and then I'll have that same recording coming through live anyway, without having to rely on OBS for saving any files. Because that's what I'm sure it'll work most of the time, but occasionally everything hiccups, and then potentially you end up not having a recording you thought you were going to have. That's what I like about Zencaster for podcasting, is that it takes care of the recording on each person's local side. So even if you have like a computer crash in the middle of a recording, the Zencaster will try and recover that file and pick it up, and then send it at the end of the recording to my Dropbox.
oh, that makes sense. Yeah, like for this thing, we could always get a podcast recording from the Restream server too, because it's going to have full audio, full quality from everyone at the server, and it's actually better quality than what you see coming from usually what's actually coming from YouTube.
Yeah, and if you just want to make sure, and this is something I'll tell Ben when he gets on here, if you go into the settings for Restream under audio, you have to add additional audio settings and then turn on resolution audio, because the audio is not recorded in high res.
Yes. So I turn mine on high res audio, but you got to make sure everybody else does.
Yeah, the default is for that to be off.
Yeah, but that's just because everybody has potato computers.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't have Star Citizen computers.
They don't
you
have
just
Star
started
Citizen.
echoing.
I started echoing? Really? Let me look.
Yeah.
That's weird.
I can hear stuff lightly in the
Oh,
background.
I know why. Yeah. I know exactly why. Because I should be on that. There we go. Okay, how's that?
That sounds better.
Okay.
Oh, that's worse.
That's worse? You're kidding. That shouldn't be.
Nope.
That should not be worse. Oh, no, that was backwards. Okay, so I put that on 7, this one on 5. Okay, how about now?
I don't know.
Same?
Okay, that's better.
I don't know.
Nope, I hear myself again.
Uh,
It's like my voice is voxing out of your headphones or something. Stop fucking up your audio, bro.
I'm not fucking it up. I'm just making changes. People always seem to
Potato ears.
think that somehow I'm.
Well, you make it seem like you know everything about this.
I do. I know everything about it. But let me.
But it's not easy. It's not audio's not easy.
Audio is hard.
Yeah, it is.
I have how many here? Here, I'm gonna take a freaking screenshot just so you get an idea of this. Oh shit! Can I not do this?
It was still funny when Raymond Duncan was like, "No, fix it now."
That was funny, right?
Yeah, I switched over to using Streamlabs desktop too.
Okay.
That's just because I figured out that it could do the virtual camera thing like OBS now.
Oh, it can.
So that's why I'm using Streamlabs.
Oh, okay.
Because I did some research last night, and you're full of shit. Streamlabs and what's it called? Stream Elements use the exact same companies for their merch.
No way.
They do. They're both using Printful.
Really?
Yeah, I went through.
Direct? Is it cheaper to go direct?
Not exactly. I mean, it is a little bit cheaper to go direct. I could set up a Printful store. I've done that before. We got to get WordPress with WooCommerce, and then we can link it so that anytime somebody buys a shirt. Can I explain?
No, I'm agreeing with you. You don't have to explain. I'm agreeing with you. I think you're right, because I am not comparing two products ordered at the same time. I'm comparing like a product ordered 2 years ago to a product ordered like a month ago.
Yeah, well, 2 years ago they were using the same people.
Yeah.
Like what they're using is the Printful API. So whenever you're setting up merch in their stores, it's taking the assets and just sending it to Printful, and then Printful basically just finds a local printer that's near that place that's part of their group that will print it. So all of our stuff's going to be coming from California.
Okay, but it's not like the nearest place to the person that bought it. It's the nearest place to you.
Manufacturing. They have like zones.
Okay.
Basically.
Because if it's the closest one to the orderer, then different people will get different quality products. That would suck.
Yeah, no, it's like closest to me. So it's basically like they make it at the place closest to you. Most of it gets made out in California, and then it gets shipped out. But if you're in like overseas, they have a partner overseas that's printing it.
So somebody
they're supposed to be the same quality. Same shirts, same printing process, everything.
Got it. Well, that makes more sense.
I went and if you go look at the Stream Elements store and you go look at the new one that I just put up, I sent you a link for Streamlabs too, so you can actually just log into that shit.
Okay.
You have to make an account, I believe, but if you go to streamlabs.com/Griftcast IRL, you'll be able to see all of the merch, and you can see it's literally the same fucking. Some of the images are exactly the same from the mock-up generator that we used on the other one. So I migrated the designs over last night up until 4 in the morning, and Then I created some sublimation prints too, like with the background, just to show you like that's what we can do.
Okay.
So like the difference between Stream Elements and this one is that they're the same product. They come from like basically the same sources. It's just they have different ability. Like Streamlabs has secondary products, a lot more secondary products that you can get
Yeah.
that like backpacks and shit like that. Which I don't know
Yeah.
if I sell a backpack, but I'm gonna make one. But we got the hoodies, we got the mugs, we got freaking pretty much everything.
So you converted everything back to Streamlabs?
Yeah, well, I mean, because the stream element shit is just bothering me because I can't see everything in one system. Now I
Yeah.
have Streamlabs desktop with the OBS running the little thing that's in the background right here. Plus, it has all of the alerts built right into it, so it saves me an entire fucking. It saves me a lot of space on my screen.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, as long as the quality's good.
Yeah, quality's good. You didn't even notice that the alerts were different, did you? It's because I'm using the same alerts on Streamlabs and Stream Elements. They're identical.
Yeah, I wasn't really paying attention, but okay.
Yeah, but the alerts are identical. So,
Cool.
I think overall, Stream Elements is cool or whatever. If you're like a single person streamer, like if you're just on YouTube or you're just on Twitch and you're focused on that one platform, then yeah, it's better because I mean things look a little bit better and they're not like constantly trying to sell you shit that you don't need. But so far it seems better. And then now you can see, we have the event list right there.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna leave that up like that.
Okay.
That's from one of my that's from one of the packages that I bought a while back. So it looks a little bit better. We adjusted the chat and stuff, so like we have a lot of like, good shit coming forward, but I figured, like now that the podcast's over, we can go ahead and shut this thing down and then I'm gonna finish eating and probably go live.
Okay.
For real.
Cool. I'll be editing the podcast for a little bit here, and then I might join.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just do your podcast editing. I mean, I'm probably gonna take like an hour. So I'm just looking at all of this stuff online, trying to check our, links and stuff like that. Looks like we've posted it out quite a bit. We've had a lot of views. It says 192 views, 94 clicks.
Nice.
50% click-through rate. And we've already sold merch on the first store or on the new store, so all the old merch will still be available on the old store if you want it or whatever.
Yeah.
But we just migrated to this other thing just because it's easier.
And then when is the old store going to go down, or is it down already?
It won't go down. It'll just stay up.
Well, isn't it just a duplicate of products?
Not exactly. I pulled the old store down, then the Griftcast IRL store is still up. It'll just be there.
Okay.
So if people want those older designs or whatever,
got it.
They can get those still, so people don't complain that they can't get them.
Yeah.
Oh, I just want the Griftcast, the original one with just Griftcast on the front.
Well,
I don't want the Griftcast shirt.
I was gonna say we should probably do like a month-end shutdown of that store, and then we can grift for a whole month about how this is your last opportunity to get that original stuff before the store goes down.
All right, I like that actually.
Yeah.
Yep.
Got a grift.
Yeah, we got to grift hard, and I mean, we grifted like $10 today. You guys got like 2 super chats throughout this entire thing.
Nice.
I bet if I was up here trolling, it would have probably got more. But we'll come back. Hopefully, we can have another big day. Yeah, once we come back with the interactive shit.
The other thing is, obviously, after this episode, then the people that are just listening to the podcast are going to hear that we're doing it live, probably for the first time, and they're like, "Oh, well, let's check this out." And then we may have brand new people coming to the stream next time that were podcast listeners but don't know about the stream or don't know about the YouTube channel. So it's all about getting those numbers up, man.
Yeah, we'll get them numbers up. We'll keep pushing them up. We want to thank everybody in the chat for coming and joining us for our first podcast test where we do this.
Yeah.
And trust me, we're going to make the format better. Like, it's going to be these guys on here, but we're going to get a lot crazier because we want to have the first
we're
interactive
basically building a
podcast.
CDN at
We're
this point.
Podcast 3.0. That's what we are.
3.0.
Podcasting 3.0.
Exactly. Yeah, no, we're basically building a CDN right now.
Content delivery network, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Except for the only content we're delivering is money to our pockets. So
Directly.
please send super chats.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what
Please send
content
money.
delivery is. We're delivering the content of their money into ours. Yeah.
Yes. So please send money.
Money is good. Money is important for us to keep doing the things that we're doing. And honestly, the way that the people are liking what we're doing, I think we're on the right track.
Yeah. I mean, this one, you know, obviously there was a little bit less people in here, but it's because we're not doing it like this is off the format. So we need to bring the podcast into the format. And I guarantee you guys will be, everybody's going to be like, Joe Rogan? That guy's trash. Fucking Gene? Mr. Mean, Sir Gene?
Everybody's going to be like that.
He's the shit. And then that Fango guy, fuck him or whatever, but he's over there too. I guess he's all right.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the way I want to see it.
The Fango guy.
Don't us him. Don't bother him. He's going to turn into a 55-foot tall robot. Fuck your shit up if you watch out.
Could happen. It'll
happen.
Yeah.
You don't believe it? That's
what do you think of Ben and his story about Ruby Ridge?
I was listening to a part of it. I thought I to be perfectly honest, I was just having trouble even hearing anything that he was saying because it wasn't that it was quiet. It was that he kept on moving his. He knew he was having microphone problems. Yet he's one of those dumbasses that moves his fucking head around when he's talking, and he thinks that he can like lean back and like smoke a cigarette and be all fucking cool like somebody's fucking watching him. And it was just. It's nothing that he did. He seems like he's actually a really smart, like intelligent individual. Yeah. This is just me bitching specifically about shit just to be funny. Okay? Yeah. Even if it's not funny or whatever, it's funny to me because I was like, you goddamn retard! Look at the fucking mic and don't move your fucking head. It's already bad, and then you're making it worse. Seriously, that's why if I was your producer, I would have stopped that shit right then and there, and then I would have fucking been like, no, dude, choke on dicks. We're taking 10 minutes and we're fixing this shit. I don't give no fucks. That's what I would say. Yeah,
I know, but I'm lazy and I'm not that, so.
I know, but that's why I'm here, so I can be not that. So next time, if we have audio problems, we need to fix
it in post. So it was quick and easy fix. So now that we've got the live element in, I think.
What kind of mic did he say he buy though? What kind of mic did he say he buy?
So he got a Yeti.
So it's probably the Nano Yeti.
Yeah, it's like $100.
Yeah, it was the Nano Yeti. That's a pretty good mic.
Yeah,
it's just that
I've got one of those.
Yetis are notorious, like they're stupid. They're really, really sensitive, but at the same time, like if you start using their processing, if you're not using their software to process it, it sounds bad. And it has that exact issue. And all you really needed to do is just turn off the gate and compressors and, just go raw, and it would have sounded 1,000 times better. He would have just needed to, like, literally shut that shit off.
Yeah. Well, and again, like he said, this is his travel mic, so he wanted to just test it out. Normally, we record on pro quality mics here. We've both got our E320s with outboard DSPs and mixers and stuff. So he basically duplicated my setup. So this was as much a test of using the smaller portable mic for him as it was of streaming for me. So it's all fine. I think when he's traveling, this mic will be perfectly adequate. It's gonna work.
He just needs to like fucking do a few things. We can talk offline about what he needs to do. But as long as he got that Blue Voice software, and if his laptop has a NVIDIA or NVIDIA GPU, then he can use the NVIDIA broadcaster like voice shit, and that's how I get rid of all my background instead of using a voice, gate.
Yeah. Now, if you could get rid of the cough using that'd be even better.
Yeah, but no, I can't. That comes from doing dabs.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. I got nothing else.
Oh, good. I don't really. I mean, I'm not even dressed.
Okay, thanks for sharing. And obviously, I'm not on
Wearing a
camera
shirt.
either, so you know.
Good.
It's
Well, I guess that's it. This Griff stream's over.
Grift
Bye,
stream's over.
folks.
Yeah, next time
Oh.
we want a little more donations coming in though.
Yeah,
We'll have
seriously, we're really, really
fewer
upset
audio
with the
issues,
lack
better
of
donations.
donations. Yeah, seriously. Like I was telling you, fix those audio issues. You're
Yeah.
fucking up our donations.
It's the audio. That's got to be the main reason for it. But it'll get better. And like I said, once we start getting some of the people that actually download the podcast, that subscribe to the podcast, starting to also come into the stream, I think those folks will be a lot more inclined to donate as well.
I think so too, and they're probably super, super rich, so we'll definitely take their money.
We'll take everybody's money.
Exactly. We love money.
Yeah, we're money agnostic.
Yeah, we don't give a shit if it's blue, white, green, purple, made out of metal, made out of plastic, digital, whatever, dude. Send it.
Mm-hmm.
You got silver? We'll take it.
We'll take it.
You trying to get rid of some fucking gold? Bam. You got platinum, dog? You got some motherfucking uranium 235? I'll find somebody that'll buy it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think we're legally allowed to take that, but okay.
Actually, you can own that.
I think you need
totally buy that legally.
You need to be
No,
licensed for
over a certain. You can buy a piece as long as it's under a certain level.
Have you looked into this?
Yes, because I had a teacher that had some, and it was like in a little tiny vial, and he was like, "Yeah, that right there was like super expensive or whatever." And he was like, "But yeah, you know, you can't really buy much more than that right there. That's about the limit." Although I've literally seen a dude. I met a guy one time. Well, I didn't meet him, but he sent me a picture. His name was Ella High Priest, and he shit, no bullshit, had a fucking whole entire bar of uranium 235. You know, a yellow cake bar. He's just like holding it, and I'm just like, "Why do you have that?" And he was like, "I bought it. It's not illegal to buy." And I'm just like, "But you're holding a bar of uranium 235, which is radioactive, in your hand without a fucking glove on."
Yeah, that's not smart. So I just looked it up. Yeah, you can't buy any without a license right now.
I bet you can. I mean, how'd this dude get it?
This dude probably got it before that law passed.
I mean, he also is from Australia, but whatever.
He's from Australia? Right. Well, he had it illegally. That's how that dude had it. I'll tell you that right now.
Exactly. It was illegally. He had illegally obtained uranium 235.
Well, he obtained anything illegally.
He was posting pictures of it on social media.
Yeah.
With a picture with himself holding it. That's loud as fuck.
What was loud as fuck?
Being loud. He's holding a picture of uranium 235, posting pictures of himself on social media with that shit. That's what I call loud. That's being loud as fuck. Just be all like, "Look at me, guys. I got some 235, bro."
All right. Well, fun times. I will catch you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Later, dude. That was the Just the Two Good Old Boys podcast. I'm not sure exactly how that was. We were planning on making that go, but I'm glad that it went. And now I'm going to end the stream. So thanks for donating. Hopefully you guys donate some more. Adios. Be well. And bye. Bye. Bye.
Whatever we do, change comes. Comedy with the implosion of our imperium, and it's coming with the rapid degradation of the ecosystem itself. And it's nothing we can do to stop. It's how we cope with this this change? Will we respond rationally? Will we learn to speak to the world with a new humility?